Okay, excellent. Thank you, Stephanie. So let us begin with our presentation. Um, let me just tell you all a bit about myself before we proceed. My name, of course, as you all know, is Christopher Vagalia. I am an accountant by profession. In the last 10 years or so, I've moved away from the accounting profession and I've focused a lot of my efforts within the software development space, among other things. Should I turn on the video so they can see that? No, that's fine. So on today's presentation, we shall be talking about a topic which is a very different one from what most people talk about, especially in a country like Papua New Guinea, which is an emerging economy. But I think the topic that we shall be focusing on today, which is blockchain and cryptocurrency, has a lot of relevance as the world moves further into the future and with the advent of many new technologies throughout the world. And a lot of these technologies have also hit Papua New Guinea as well. So I think the main objective of our discussion today is just to bring ourselves to truly appreciate what blockchain and cryptocurrency is. Disclaimer, this is by no means financial advice for you to go and start investing in cryptocurrency and things like blockchain. But I believe a lot of the discussion today will focus around what the technology is, the expectations, what drives the technology, what it aims to achieve, and a lot of different things as well. This presentation in itself will be very participative. So if you do have any questions, any comments, do feel free to add your comments on the chat section of the Zoom application, and I shall endeavor to address a lot of your questions and queries throughout the course of the day. So moving on, let me just go back. So just to begin, just to set the stage, I'm just posing a question to all of our participants. If any of you have any experiences with cryptocurrency or blockchain, have you had that discussion with your peers, or have you ventured into the blockchain and crypto space on your own? Please put a show of hands. You can put a show of hands so you can comment. So at least I know where everyone is with regard to the technology. It'll be interesting to see how many of you have actually talked and delved into the technology before we begin. And it's good for me too, so at least I understand the level at which all of you are coming to this presentation today, and the knowledge that you have about the topic. So blockchain and cryptocurrency is a very, very interesting and a very challenging area. I say that because having been in the space now for a number of years, since 2018, I've come to truly appreciate what the technology is about. I've also come to understand the challenges that the technology brings, the misunderstandings that come with the use of such a technology, the resentment towards technology such as this, and a whole array of different issues surrounding the technology itself and its usage. Yeah. So I think for us in Papua New Guinea, the first time I heard about cryptocurrency was probably in 2020. That was like 10 years after the technology was released into the world by a person or group called Satoshi Nakamoto in 2009. So it took 10 years to get to people like us in Papua New Guinea who've been in the ICT space. But it's only just recently in Papua New Guinea that agencies like the Bank of Papua New Guinea and Bank of South Pacific and these other institutions have really highlighted some of the merits and disadvantages of these technologies. So the purpose of this training today is to just build that understanding, at least a basic understanding of the technology, where it comes from, why it was created in the first instance, and what it sets to achieve, so that at least you're armed with that knowledge going forward. So if you do happen to get into that discussion, if you come across others within your sphere of influence who are talking about these technologies, then you're not left in the dark, because you already have some basic idea of what the technology is. Okay, so moving forward, I think a good place for us to start is to define what the technology is. With any discussion, I think a good starting point is to define what the technology is, or what the topic to be discussed is, before we start getting into the finer details of what the technology is, how it works, and so forth. So the definition here, as you can see from the screen, blockchain defined and its history. So the definition is very simple. A blockchain is a growing list of records called blocks that are linked together using cryptography. It's also described as a trustless and fully decentralized peer-to-peer immutable data storage. When we say immutable, meaning once you've entered data into that record, it can never be changed or undone. Okay, that is spread over a network of participants, often referred to as nodes. So simply what that means is we are all sitting on a decentralized network on our computers. So our computers could be considered as nodes. So it's either your computer, if you're using your mobile phone, your phone is a node, which is part of the blockchain or a decentralized network. Now, later on in the presentation, you will see an illustration of what I mean by decentralized. But as an example, I'll use the central bank to illustrate this decentralized concept. The Central Bank of Papua New Guinea is it's centralized, right? Meaning it's regulated by one party. They provide all the guidelines, so it's relatively centralized. Whereas with things like the blockchain and cryptocurrencies, for example, the network is decentralized, meaning it's not controlled by any one person. Everyone has a say on the network. Everyone contributes towards the network. Everyone has a copy of all the records on that network. So we are all stakeholders on a blockchain network. So that is very different from the conventional networks that we are familiar with. For example, the banking system. The banking system is also centralized. The current banking system as we know it. For example, BSP. All of us have bank accounts with BSP, but ultimately control is from BSP. We just simply are using their network as third parties to conduct our transactions, to transfer and receive money. But we don't necessarily own the network itself. It is owned by BSP. Okay. Cryptocurrencies and blockchains are very different. We actually own. It's a decentralized system where everyone has a stake. Now moving on, each block contains a cryptographic hash of the previous block, a timestamp. A hash is simply a group of numbers and letters that represent something, and that's unique for every transaction on a blockchain. No two transactions are the same. A timestamp is simply just the date and time that is attached to that particular block, and of course, transaction data. Transaction data could be anything. It could be a monetary value. It could be a picture of your favorite food or your pet, or whatever the case may be, or a document, for example, a certificate medical record, a health record, university diploma, whatever the case may be. That's the data that is contained. So the timestamp proves that the transaction data existed when the block was published in order to get into its hash. Okay, it gets quite complex, and a lot of the terms that we use with regard to the software and the technology is quite technical. But I'll give you an example to just bring the message across with regard to how cryptocurrencies and blockchain will work in my later examples. So one thing that we need to understand, and this is one area that a lot of people, and especially a lot of Papua New Guineans, have confusion. They relate blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and they use the two terms interchangeably. But that is very wrong. Cryptocurrencies and blockchains are two very different things. If there's anything that you learned from this presentation today, is that blockchain and cryptocurrencies are two very different things. Blockchain is the technology that underpins the function of a cryptocurrency. So you can look at it this way. The blockchain is the starting point, and then you have cryptocurrencies that sit on top of a blockchain that allows cryptocurrency to then be transferred from one person to another using the technology, the blockchain technology, as the foundation. And if you go to the second heading, what came first, crypto or blockchain? Most people believe that Bitcoin and blockchain are one and the same thing, which is my point previously. However, that is not the case, as one is the underlying technology that powers most applications, of which one of them is cryptocurrencies. I hope that is very clear. Now, the history of cryptocurrency dates back to 2009. The technology or the concept happened way before that, in the 1970s, 80s. But the technology that actually was released into the world came about in 2009, when the first white paper was released. And that was released by a person or a group of people. We don't really know who they are. Under the alias Satoshi Nakamoto. So there is the first white paper detailing the technology of how blockchain works. And that was done in 2009. And from there up until now, there have been numerous iterations of the technology. The first being Bitcoin, and that's a lot of the reason why many of you sitting here today may have heard of Bitcoin. It is probably the most popular cryptocurrency out there. And that's right, it was the first cryptocurrency to come out using the blockchain technology. To date, there's over 1,000. There's hundreds of different cryptocurrencies in circulation using the same technology and other variants that are in circulation in the world today. So it's a $1 billion industry itself, and it's going to take over, or in fact, and you will understand why as we move throughout the course of this presentation. Okay, I'm just checking the chat if anyone has any questions up until this point. If you do have any questions, please feel free to ask your question or make your comments. I have the microphone on, so if you do speak, I can hear you. And let's make this as interactive as we can. Okay, moving to our next slide. Again, all these notes we shall send to you after this training. We'll have our team here at CPA PNG disseminate this presentation, the notes, as well as the video content. So you have something to make reference to later on down the line. So as you can see on this screen, what we have here is just a brief history of the evolution of blockchain and cryptocurrency. So as I said, the concept in itself came out in the 1990s. It actually goes back a bit further than that, but in history, it's recorded in the 1990s. And then between the years 2011 to 2012, the deployment of cryptocurrency in its use as cash transactions. So the first use of cryptocurrency or blockchain was the development of cryptocurrencies, which serve to transact monetary value from one person to another. So again, as I said, that is why many people are familiar with Bitcoin, which is the first cryptocurrency that came onto the market, because that was the first use of the blockchain technology. Okay, moving forward, in 2013 to 2014, the technology in itself became more widespread, and financial markets and applications started using blockchain beyond cash transactions. Now, for me, this is the most interesting part, because we're moving away from the cash aspect of cryptocurrency into other technologies that utilize blockchain. Examples, one would be for identification, national ID, putting an NID on a blockchain, maintaining medical records, voting. The technology in itself is ideal for things like voting. Now, Papua New Guinea is set for the national general elections, and with all the controversy that surrounds election and polling, blockchain would answer that question in a heartbeat, because it is a decentralized system of check and balances that cannot be manipulated whatsoever. So for me, this is why I got into the blockchain and cryptocurrency space. As a new person into the technology, when I first started, I was very much interested in the monetary aspects of the technology. Then purchasing items online using cryptocurrencies, which I used to do a lot of in the early part of my association with the technology. But later on down the line, after understanding the fundamental building blocks of what cryptocurrencies was and the nature of blockchain, a lot of these other technologies started to get my interest. And one of them was voting and national ID. Another thing too that really caught my attention as an accountant and a technology, how it plays a role in that space later on as we start to discuss some of its characteristics and why it is suited for things like audits, tasks that involve secure way to store and manage information. So moving on, in 2015 to 2016, that was the birth of permissioned blockchain networks. These are simply networks that are decentralized, but also have the element of centralization where you can gain access and remove access. So it was a mixture of both a decentralized and centralized system. That took place around 2015, 2016. So that's the top half there. So I was looking at it from a linear point of view. But if that was towards the very end, but if you can see the timeline in itself, 2019 was when that technology was actually introduced. So that would be one of the milestone years that the technology came out. And this is when blockchain became quite popular because the technology had never been seen before and its application started to really come to mind. And it played a huge role financial, and to this day, the technology has grown in leaps and bounds. An example of some countries that are using the technology include the United States, Russia, China, even our neighbors in Australia. Only a few months back, the legislation or a bill was tabled within the Australia provide regulation with regard to the use of cryptocurrencies in Australia. So on the back of this, we can truly see now that the technology in itself is starting to gain momentum throughout the world. And there is a reason why it is gaining that type of momentum. And that's because of the benefits that come with using such a technology. Again, all of these notes will be in your, I will not dwell too much on the history. There's a lot there to digest, but we'll move on to the more important parts of this presentation. Now, in the beginning of my presentation, I spoke about what blockchains are. Now, blockchains are the technology that underpins the use of things like cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is just one application that uses the blockchain. And I'll give a mobile phone as an example. And I use this in all my examples because I think it really illustrates how cryptocurrency and blockchain are related. Now, every one of you has a mobile phone, right? Whether it's an iOS, an Apple, or an Android phone. Now, let's use an Android phone as an example. To purchase an Android phone, it will come with its own operating system, right? The operating system is Android. So Android standard interface you have, once you turn your phone on, you've got your messages, you've got your recent calls, all of those are already pre-installed. That's the operating system. That software is what runs the hardware. The hardware is the physical device that you hold. It's that rectangular box that we can see and we can touch, the tangible device that we can see. So the operating system is simply code or the software that runs that device. So it runs how your camera works, it runs how the microphone or your microphone works, how you adjust your volume levels. That is all dictated by the software that's run. So the software on your Android phone is the Android software. Now, it comes with its pre-installed applications, and you also have the option of installing additional applications. And in order to do that, you simply go into a place called Google Play Store, and you choose the application that you're after, and you simply install that. So now relating that back to our discussion about blockchain and cryptocurrency, blockchain is simply your Android software. It is what sits on that hardware, and it enables everything else to happen. Now, cryptocurrency, on the other hand, is or can be related to one of those software that you download from Google Play Store. So it's just an application that sits on top of your Android operating system on your mobile phone. So if you look at it in there are two things, but because one came out first and then the other one was the first application to be used, a lot of people use the term blockchain and cryptocurrency interchangeably. So I thought I'd just give that as an example before we move forward, just to clear that aspect of what the two are. So if we come back to our diagram, if we just look at the diagram now, this is some of the characteristics of a blockchain, which is the underlying fee that runs cryptocurrency. On the left, you see a centralized network. And I'll use the banks as an example. So on your left, you can see a centralized hub. This is generally how the banking system as we know it operate. So you have one central authority, and it pretty much regulates everything on that net. So you can look at this as, for example, the Central Bank of Papua New Guinea or BSP. So it's all centralized. Okay, now in contrast, if you look on your right-hand side, you see the decentralized network is very different. There are a lot of different nodes. So those little dots there are called nodes. And nodes are simply just devices or computers on network. Okay, so in any network, those dots are individuals, they could be organizations, they could be mining farms, they could be a mobile phone. Any of those dots on your right-hand side are nodes. And each of those nodes have a copy of the entire network. So if for that dot there that says node, if that particular node is somehow destroyed or is corrupt or is hijacked by a hacker, it doesn't affect the other nodes on the system because they're all running independently. They all come up to a consensus that this is how the network is supposed to be, and they all run. And there's a consensus mechanism that all of them have to adhere to. So if, for example, that dot or that one that says node somehow is corrupted or is offline for whatever reason, it doesn't affect the network because everyone else has a copy of that network and they can all pick up the slack when one node goes down. The difference with a centralized system is if you look at a centralized hub in the middle there that has that black circle around it, if somehow the Bank of Papua New Guinea crashes tomorrow, Papua New Guinea will be in a bit of a bother because they are the regulator. They dictate how things. So that is one of the reasons why a lot of what the world is doing now is slowly shifting towards a decentralized systems, and they're no longer depending on one system to regulate it, to control, for example, the financial system. Because at the end of the day, if that centralized system somehow, for whatever reason, is unable to function as it's supposed to, then we have a problem. Whereas in a decentralized system, life continues, irrespective of whether or not one node is up or not. So I think that really illustrates what a blockchain is. Another thing that we spoke about previously is that all of these little transactions, these dots, all of these things that take place within a decentralized systems, they are recorded on some kind of a ledger. And every one of those dots has a copy of that ledger. So sometimes people refer to blockchain to currencies or blockchains as decentralized ledgers. So as accountants, we know what ledgers are. We deal with ledgers every day, right? It's just a simple listing of all the transactions that take place. So for example, on a decentralized system like this, all of those little dots there, they have a record of every transaction that has taken place in the whole ecosystem. So in the event one of them goes down, there's so many different nodes there to pick up the slack and to carry on. And because there's so many of them now, the consensus mechanism is even much stronger, because no one single node can control or influence the whole network. Because everyone else has a copy and a record of the transactions. And once they come into consensus, they'll kick this person out if they try to come in and change the network in any way. And that is another reason why a lot of people are moving towards blockchain, is because the technology in itself, aside from being unchangeable once a transaction takes place, it is virtually impenetrable. Meaning it cannot, the system safe and secure work. That is another reason why the world is moving towards blockchain and decentralized networks. And I say this because all of these little dots that you can see in a decentralized network on your right, they all run by very complex computers, some of them that maintain, they call miners, and they run huge mining farms from a lot of computational power that hash out the transactions that take place on a blockchain. So in order for one person to hack into a system, they literally have to go and undo all the records of all those little dots in a system. And that's virtually impossible to do in this day and age with the type of technology we have. And some may argue that with the advent of supercomputers, that can be done, but I beg to differ. I think it is very difficult for people to hack into a blockchain. So I hope this illustration helps with your understanding of what our blockchain looks like. Again, feel free to put your comments. If you have any questions, please raise your hands or feel free to ask your questions. I have my microphone or my earphones on so I can address your questions. Oh, you have any questions? Okay, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Okay, moving on. Now, to really understand what blockchain is, the cryptocurrency aspect, let's put that aside for a minute, because I think the blockchain component is probably the most interesting part. And this aspect of cryptocurrency and blockchain itself is what I believe is the attraction to its adaptation in the last couple of years. So if you look on your screen, you'll see some of the characteristics that I've included there that make blockchain technology unique. Okay, let's start with the first one on your left, top left-hand corner. Immutable data. Now, immutability is a characteristic that allows a piece of data to never be changed once it's put into a system. So for example, if I go into the NID office tomorrow, if they have a blockchain system there, which I'm hoping they should implement, because I believe that is the only system that will work for NIDs. If they have a system there, you simply go and put your records on that system and your biometric, for example, your thumbprint or your retina scan, and it scans that onto, for example, a database running off a blockchain. Once your records are in there, it can never be changed. No one can go in there and manipulate your name, change the date of your birth, and all of those things, because the data on that record is immutable. It can never be changed. Another good use case should be election. Time to vote. We all go to the polls and we vote. A lot of people have doubts with regard to how secure our voting venues are, But just imagine running that on something called a blockchain. You simply rock up there, put your fingerprint into the system identifies you, and you cast your vote. And once your vote is taken up on that blockchain, it can never be manipulated again. No one can go into the system and start tinkering with the figures because the data is contained and it's immutable. It can never be changed. And it's safe and secure. So those are some examples. And I'm using the election because we're in that period, and I think we can all relate to it and, you know, start using some of these ideas to really bring true to what the technology stands for. Okay, as we move to the right, digital freedom. Blockchains are decentralized. There is no organized company controlling the information stored on them and how they operate. Now, this was the second reason why I got into blockchain. Financial freedom. The reason I got into this space is because I have traveled throughout Papua New Guinea, providing financial literacy training to a lot of our people in the rural areas. And it's quite alarming that, you know, many of our people in our rural areas, they do not have access to a formal banking system. Most of them do not have a bank account. And that's simply because the majority of our people in rural areas do not meet the minimum requirements to open a bank account, meaning they don't have an ID card. They may not have a letter from an employee stating that this is their identity. So those are some of the challenges that a lot of our people in the rural areas face when it comes to opening a bank account and participating in the formal financial system. Now, with things like blockchain and cryptocurrency, anyone, as long as they have a mobile phone, can create a bank account that runs off of using cryptocurrency to transact. So it addresses the financial gap between our people in the rural areas, for example, and the urban areas. You'll find a lot of countries and emerging economies such as Papua New Guinea are building their whole banking systems on blockchain now, because they're then able to reach out to the rural people and have them participate now. And for your information, things like cryptocurrency, for example, they are all exchanged as assets. They have value attached to them. So they are traded like any other asset around the world. So there are places called exchanges where you can convert your kina, your US dollar, and purchase cryptocurrency, which is worth the equivalent of that currency that you are trading. And then you start trading using Bitcoin now. Virgin Airlines, there's another company in the US, and there's a whole number of companies throughout the world now who are selling as a means of payment. And Deloitte is one of them. They did a transaction, I think it was towards the end of last year or at the beginning of last year. They did some acquisitions using cryptocurrency. So this is nothing new. This is nothing foreign. It's just that these discussions haven't been had, and that's simply because the fact there's very little understanding about the technology. And the moment you talk about cryptocurrency and blockchain, people start jumping up and down and saying, it's a scam, it's this, it's that. But from a person who's actually coded these things and who understands the technology behind it, cryptocurrency and blockchains aside, I can vet for the technology and what it brings. Characteristics here. So moving forward, the next characteristic is anonymity and privacy. Cryptocurrencies built on top of blockchain technology gives individuals the capability to carry out transactions anonymously. Okay, you can read this two ways and I'll explain why. Of course, blockchain is the most secure to transact online because of the fact that everyone has a copy of the ledger, so everybody can come to a consensus. No one can cheat the system. That's the first thing, and we talked about that previously. On a blockchain, all cryptocurrency transactions are anonymous. Unlike the banking system, when I transfer money from me to your account, there's a record of my name in your account where the money is coming from. Cryptocurrencies are very different. We're not represented by our names, we're represented by a number, a public key. It's a combination of numbers and letters that represent us as stakeholders in the system. So when you want to transact, for example, if I want to transact from me to another person, if he goes into his, they call it an e-wallet. An e-wallet is simply all your transactions are kept, where your value is stored. If you go into your e-wallet, you will not see my name. You will only see the number that represents me. Now, that is a good thing if you are into doing things anonymously, you don't want people to know. But on the flip side, that also comes as a disadvantage too. And I'll tell you why. There's been a lot of argument with the use of cryptocurrency, and one of them is because of its anonymity. A lot of people use examples as, for example, the war or terrorists. Terrorists can use these technologies to do bad things too. They're able to transfer millions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency from one country to another in a matter of minutes to fund the terrorist acts without being traced. That's one of the problems with this, being anonymous, because they aren't able to trace it back to a particular person or institution. It's just a number. It could be anybody. It could be me, it could be you, it could be CPA, PNG, we know, right? So that's its characteristic. It's a good thing if you look at it from the anonymity perspective, but that can also come back to haunt us too, if we can't trace the transaction back to whoever it came from. And I'll give another example. So, and this is something that most of you will be familiar with. I think just last year, or was it this year? Our finance department were hacked. Was it this year? Just this year, beginning of this year. Yeah, they were hacked with ransomware. Now, I've had experiences ransomware. I was probably one of the first. I was hacked too. I did an audit with one of my clients, and I was also hacked. And what they do with ransomware is when they hack into your system, they hack into your machine, and then they encrypt all your data, meaning they lock all your data. And then what they do is they will demand payment from you. So they will send you a message, and this is what happened to me. I was sitting at my client's desk, I was doing the audit, I was preparing my working papers, and then my screen just goes blank. A blank screen just starts rising up from the bottom like you'd see the credits at the end of a movie. And my screen just went blank, and it followed a message. A message followed on my computer. I saw it on the machine. It said, your machine has just been hacked with ransomware. And in order to decrypt or release your data, you need to pay us X amount of Bitcoin into this e-wallet address. So you can see some of the dangers now with using things like Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. It's got its advantages, and it's also got its disadvantages. So as I said, this is not financial advice. This is to make everyone aware of some of the pros and cons of the technology itself. So that's what happened. And I'm sure this is what happened to our friends at finance too. The thing that I asked them, and I had the privilege to speak to our friends at finance, and I asked them, the first thing that I asked when they said they were attacked by a ransomware, because I understood the nature of ransomware. As the name suggests, they hold you at ransom. So they encrypt something that is important to you. And in order for you to get that thing back, you need to pay them in the form of Bitcoin, which is untraceable. So they can still receive the money anonymously. And because Bitcoin is an asset, it's recognized and is traded for value, they can simply go to any bank that accepts Bitcoin, they can convert it to cash. So you see how they can siphon money away from people without being traced. That's one of the disadvantages. So the first question I asked our friends at finance, I asked them, they just gave me that name, but if it was a ransom, so that's one of its characteristics. Okay, moving on, security. Public blockchains are distributed across hundreds of thousands of computers. As we saw in our previous diagram in the decentralized systems, it would be impossible to attack every computer simultaneously. That's why it's the most secure. Because what happens is all those different computers, they have the same record which is on the network. So if you attack one, it will not affect the system. They will all push that person out, and the system will continuously run without that particular system, because all of them are on that system. They've all been encrypted. They've used cryptography to hash all the data, and it's the most secure system. So it's the most secure way to transfer data, as I said. And that's why they use it with things like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Yeah. Money is something that you must have some level of security. You just cannot put it on a computer somewhere knowing that there are some smart people around that can hack into it and steal it. So the technology is built in such a way that it's very difficult to do. Virtually impossible. I've tried with all the little knowledge that I have. It's very difficult to hack into a blockchain. I've tested it, and I've built blockchains as well. So I know I can vouch that it is the most secure system. Okay, moving on to the next characteristics on your bottom left-hand corner on your screens. No more intermediaries. Banks, PayPal, Visa, and Western Union are all examples of intermediaries. Now, did you know that when you open a bank account at any of our banks, you do not necessarily own that account? You are simply a third party, right? You're using the bank system to transact. And that's why they're at liberty to charge you banking fees. So they charge you banking fees because every time you transact, you're using their system. So you're just a third party to their account. The beauty and the reason a lot of people have moved on to blockchain is because I said it's peer-to-peer. And as you saw in our previous diagram, you can connect to more than one person. So essentially, you own your own bank account in your phone, in your computer. And why would you charge yourself bank fees, right? There are literally no or very bank fees. So you'll find a lot of people are shifting towards cryptocurrency. Because firstly, and that will lead on to my next point. Firstly, there are no intermediaries. And the more people you have within the chain, you can expect the cost to go up. So the less people you have involved in a transaction is, which leads to the next point, lower transaction fees. And these two are very much tied together. The two last points at the bottom there, no more intermediaries and low transaction fees, right? If you're transacting directly from me to you as two different persons on a blockchain, the cost is very minimal because we're not using someone's system. The blockchain is decentralized, we all own it. So the transactions are very, very cheap. And of course, one thing that I didn't include on this list, with things like blockchain cryptocurrency, you are able to now trade globally. I can purchase things online from anywhere in the world using cryptocurrency. I've done it. I develop a lot of websites. I pay for a lot of domains, and a lot of that I need to pay online in some other part of the world to access or subscribe. I can simply do that with my Bitcoin or my cryptocurrency. It's relatively easy to do. If I wanted to purchase a car, for example, in a place called Japan, is there someone in Japan who accepts cryptocurrencies? I can send cryptocurrency straight to that person without going to the banks. He'll receive that money, he'll send that car to me. And it will take less than a week to do. because with the current system that we have right now, it's also very costly. If you're going to remit money overseas, there's a fee that comes with it. And it normally takes several days for that money to clear, and there's confirmation on their side. Cryptocurrency, if I send it now, it will take 10 minutes for it to confirm in that person's wallet. Within 10 minutes, he will receive his payment, and within the next few days, he'll send the vehicle to me. You see how it really improves the way we transact in a secure way from one person inter-country now, not just within Papua New Guinea. I can send money to anywhere halfway across the world, and it will reach them within a matter of minutes. So those are some of the reasons why a lot of people are moving towards things like cryptocurrency and blockchain. Just the sheer convenience of using the technology, the security that comes with it. But as again, they're all good things, but sometimes people use them for bad things too. And an example, and I think one of the challenges that a lot of people are facing is with this anonymity part. This one. Because if you're transacting, you can do a lot of things online which are illegal too. And they can never come back and be tied to you again because they can't see who you are. And I think just recently, I think towards the end of last year or the beginning of this year, a lot of the banks, they put a ban. I don't know if you've read some of the announcements coming from BSP, I think Kina Bank too, even warnings that come from Bank of Papua New Guinea. They've stopped transactions using their cards for the purchase or anything related to cryptocurrency. Okay, and I think it's because of the fact that right now, one of the biggest things, then I think this also ties into things like regulation. If you're going to use something like this, we must have a strong KYC protocol or regulation in our country. What KYC stands for is know your customer. K for know, Y for your, and C, customer. So like KYC requirements are things like IDs. If you go to a bank and you want to open a company account, one of its KYC requirements is for you to provide an ID. So if you're going to be dealing with the cryptocurrency and those type of technology here, we have to have some regulation in country that stipulates that if you're going to be using the technology, that number that is anonymous has to be tied to you by some form of ID. Okay, it can be done. There are systems now. A lot of people are starting to develop systems and cryptocurrencies that tie into your ID too. So I don't know if any of you have used cryptocurrency or signed up for an e-wallet of any sort. One of the requirements, if you go and you access any exchange now, and you want to go and register, and you want to create an e-wallet account for yourself, it will ask you to fill a detail, and it will always ask you for your ID, your government ID. It will either be your passport or your driver's license or your NID, one of those things. Because that forms part of the KYC. If they do not meet those requirements, don't waste your time trying to sign up, because they need to have some guarantee that they can trace you in the event that you're doing something illegal on that system. Yeah, so that's why KYC is very important. Okay, so we'll move on. Is everybody okay? Stephanie, are you still there? Nigel, just checking in.
Yes, still here.
Okay, excellent. You guys have any questions so far? Just before you ask your question. Okay, excellent, excellent. I've got a question here in the room. Yeah, Pagus, Paulus. Okay, we have a person here, one of our participants, Paulus. He has a question to ask.
Thank you. So, what happens exchange rates? Like, for example, you mentioned that we're trying to buy a car from Japan.
Yeah.
So, the value that you have in here, like whatever the value you have in your wallet,
yeah,
and you're trying to transfer across to Japan,
yeah,
will be the same. So it's uniform.
Yes, that's a good question. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
unlike Pinchikina, when you are buying it in US dollar, then you have to really pop into Pinchikina.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Police has a good question. He's asking about the exchange right there. If we're going to be using like crypto to buy stuff. Okay. So I'll give you an example. Okay. This is how we normally used to circulate money, like from a layman's understanding at the central bank here. Before they had something, they used what they call the gold standard. Gold standard, meaning that the amount of money that was sitting in our central bank, it was backed by reserves. So if you have 1 billion worth of gold, then you could print 1 billion notes because they matched each other. So that's how it was done. So if you talk about things like, for example, Bitcoin acts in a similar way. It represents, for example, like the gold. If you go on an exchange trade, you exchange your Kina or your US dollar, or your Australian dollar. At any exchange that sells this cryptocurrency, you will receive the equivalent Bitcoin. So if, for example, you want to purchase what 10,000 worth of Bitcoin, you can buy that Bitcoin that to be transferred to you in form of Bitcoin. So it's value of your currency into same thing, just trading one asset for another. Okay, but what that asset allows you to do is then, because right now you can't transfer that money straight to that person, right? In the other part, so you transfer the currency. You both once you convert, for example, if the car in Japan is what 10,000 kina, then you buy 10,000 kinas. You have to exchange that 10,000 kina that you have into Bitcoin. So it's just a simple matter of exchanging it from one form into another. Okay. So once you have that it's recognized anywhere in the world now. So if something costs 0.01 Bitcoin in America, if you go to Peru or South Africa, it will still be worth 1 point or 0.1 Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't change its value. It's a global currency and it's uniform everywhere. It's just on our part, before as we confirm, because you understand that the Kina and the US dollar are two different power multiply different. So depending on which currency you use, you might need to pay more to bring your Bitcoin to that equivalent to purchase that vehicle in other part of the world. But once you've done that, that's it. As long as they have an e-wallet, you have the Bitcoin equivalent to how much they're asking for, you simply send it over and then done deal. The transaction confirms and they'll send your car whenever they've received the confirmation. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah. So it's nothing complicated. It's simply just currency from one form into another. It's like back home in Eastern Britain, we use shell money. Yeah. We can still buy stuff using shell money today. It's got value. It may not have value to, for example, a person from the highlands, but for us in our community, in our network, it's got value because we value it for its ability to purchase for bright price and all of these kind of things too. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Okay. So these are some characteristics. And I know we've gone through them very briefly, but I think these are the main characteristics this technology is starting to really evolve now within the technology space, but it's also grown significantly, not just within the technology space, but the financial sector has really blown up. It has blown up, and it has invested billions, trillions into cryptocurrency. You just go to the internet and you type in cryptocurrency. There's so much information out there about what is happening now within the cryptocurrency and blockchain space. You'll find too that with the war in Ukraine recently, a lot of people in Ukraine are receiving donations in the form of cryptocurrency from people all around. So because they have been cut off with whatever limited internet access that they have, they're able to receive donations from people all around the world, because they may not be able to go and sit in a bank because their bank is no longer there because it has been destroyed because of all the fighting and all the raids that have taken place. But because they still have their mobile phone, they can still receive money and they can still purchase things. They can purchase equipment, they can purchase food and other things, because the people are still able to donate directly to them. So these are some of the good things, you know, that the technology allows us to do. Okay, we'll just have a look at this one first, and then we'll take a short break. I know it's a lot to take in, and I don't want to overwhelm you. You might have a brain explosion. So what I'll do is I'll just talk this very briefly. The next point here, then we can go for a coffee or break and come back again. But the next diagram that you see there is basically how the blockchain works. So what happens here is that firstly, someone has to initiate the transaction. So for example, I'm trying to buy something on the internet. I'm a web developer and I want to buy web hosting from GoDaddy, yeah, which is a hosting platform. So I will go to purchase one of the plans on their website, and then it may ask me the form of payment that I might want to use, and it may give me the option to pay in Bitcoin. So then I will go to my computer, I'll request that transaction on my machine, and then a block that represents that transaction is created in part 2. So I've initiated that particular transaction in part 2 now is represented in a form of a block. Okay, that's pushed out to all the computers on the network. Okay, so once that goes, that leads us into part 3. There's step 3. The block that we just initiated now is sent into part 3. Step 3 here is sent to every node in the network. So everybody that is on a blockchain will get that copy of, or they will get, they'll be sent that block. So as we said previously, everyone, the blockchain is just a distributed ledger where everyone can see what's happening on the blockchain. So now once everyone has a copy of that block, then it leads us to part 4. Now all of the computers within that network will then validate that transaction. Okay, they will all validate, they will make sure that it is from the right person, everything is above board. That is all done by all those computers. So collectively, we all come to consensus that this transaction is correct, and we all allow it to happen, to take place. Here. Okay. Now, in a cryptocurrency called Bitcoin, the consensus mechanism that is used is called a proof of work. I know these are some terminologies that not many of you may have heard of before, but proof of work, and I'll give you an example. Now with the current banking system as we know it, when I transfer money from my wallet, from my bank account to another person's bank account, there's normally a transaction fee associated with that. There's probably 50 toya or whatever the case may be. Blockchain, we do not have a bank, but we have people. They call them nodes too. There are people on the network too that serve not necessarily as banks, but they provide a computational power on the network to confirm all of these millions of transactions that take place. Okay. And for them, they provide equipment. They call them mining rigs. And I built one. I went to Singapore and I built one and I brought it back to Papua New Guinea. It's essentially a computer with super hashing power. So you can hash hundreds of transactions every second. So what that does is it hashes all of those transactions on the blockchain, on the network, and it confirms all of them. And then it sends a copy of all of those transactions that have taken place to everybody. So everybody's seeing the same thing. Okay. So that's called proof of work. Okay. So proof of work, when that takes place, those people who contribute those computational power to confirm those blocks, they get rewarded. They get 0.000 worth of Bitcoin for their efforts for providing that computational power. Okay, so you could see them as a bank, but not necessarily a bank because they don't charge those type of big fees. They just get a very small percentage for providing the computational power to maintain the integrity of a blockchain. Okay, so they call those people miners. They are also nodes like each and every one of us, but they have computer with they have specialized computers that work using a consensus mechanism called proof of work. Okay, that's just for Bitcoin. Other blockchains, and let me just add here now before we carry on that there's more than one blockchain. Okay, Bitcoin, for example, which is one cryptocurrency, has its own blockchain. That's purely for Bitcoin only. Okay, another currency you may have Dogecoin, for example. It could have its own. It has its own blockchain. But how they all meet, they all come together in what is called exchange. That's why all of them sit on an exchange and they're traded like any stock on a stock market, like normal currencies. Okay, and that's where the value is traded in exchange. And that's where it gets its value from. So, for example, Bitcoin is used as proof of work. There's another one called Ethereum that uses proof of stake. So, in order for you to transact on that network, you must have a stake in that network. Okay, so there are different consensus mechanisms. There's one called Burstcoin too that uses a consensus mechanism called proof of capacity, meaning depending on the amount of storage you have. So they build different blockchains and their consensus mechanisms are very different. Okay, but the one that is most popular is Bitcoin because of course it was the first one and we all know what it is. It's called proof of work. Yeah. Okay, I hope that's clear. It's getting a bit technical, but you need to understand this in order for you to really appreciate how everything happens on a blockchain. Okay, so nodes are received, all the transactions are validated. Once that process takes place and the block is confirmed, then the block is then added onto that ledger now. That listing of transactions I was talking about. Once all of these processes, process 1, step 1, 2, 3, once it's validated, once nodes receive the rewards for confirming a block and a block is confirmed, it is correct, then that block is then distributed to everybody. In my account is less by this amount, and everybody sees that, everybody. So I cannot hide and go and say, no, I did this and no one else, everyone sees it. Yeah, and that's why I was relating blockchain to things like audit. With regard to audit, if we ran all our accounting systems on a blockchain, you just imagine that this transaction here, it's immutable, but it's all captured on a ledger. So you cannot hide information here or here because it goes through a certain process and it's captured and it's locked into a ledger and it's immutable, meaning you cannot dispute that information. Right now we have a problem because firstly, our record keeping may not be up to scratch. There may be documents missing here and there. But if you ran everything on something like a blockchain, all the records are there, they're kept. There's no need for you to keep any physical documentation because you can even scan the documents, put them on the blockchain, and it's date stamped and it's hashed, meaning it's brought into this whole process and it's given a unique number and it can never be changed. And it's recorded on a ledger. So you can simply just click on a button and then your audit report is generated with everything that's happened, without fear or favor of anybody, you see. So that's how these things tie into accounting, for example. We're all accountants here. So you see the implications it has on the financial system. And another thing that I forgot to mention is its traceability. Because it is hashed and it's come through this process, every transaction can be traced. So for audit purposes, audit is the opposite of actual financial accounting. Financial accounting, we start at the source documents and then we prepare our financial statements. Audit is the other way around. We start from the financial statements and we work our way back. So the traceability aspect is very important. And with something like a blockchain and distributed ledger technology, traceability can be done. What would take us months to do in terms of audit will take us a matter of seconds. Once you click a button, it will trace the transaction back to where it came from. Yeah. And the information cannot be disputed. So I'm saying this because this is a CPA event, and this is the type of technology that we can expect. If people like Deloitte are already starting to use it, and they have already have appreciation, it's only a matter of time before it comes out in IFRS and generally accepted accounting principle as the way to audit for traceability, to trace those documents back to its source documentation. Yeah, that's why I'm making an emphasis on it now, because it applies to us within the accounting space. Yeah. So once it's added to the blockchain in part 6, then the transaction is complete. And that is basically how the blockchain will run. And that's just one. There's millions of transactions taking place. Millions. And now that people are starting to use that technology, this particular phase here, the confirmation and validation, it can take some time to do because there's so many transactions going into one place. Yeah. So you can see how the technology is starting to really grow, and it's important. It's because, and I think the main reason why a lot of people are moving towards the technology is simply because of its decentralized nature. A lot of people don't like to be told what to do. They want to be able to manage and own their own funds and not be controlled. They want to have that independence. So if they want to go and buy something there, they simply just transfer the money without going through all those processes in the bank. Filling a foreign exchange, if you're going to remit large sums of money across to another country, you have to fill certain forms. So a lot of people are tired of, they don't want it's the convenience that comes with using this technology that really appeals to them. Another thing too about the technology is like we talk a lot of the time about foreign investment, money coming into the country. We have a problem in Papua New Guinea because a lot of our money is going out, and there's very little coming back in. So we are stuck in a deficit situation. But you just imagine if our small farmers, they all had some kind of e-wallet, they're all receiving payment from other parts of the world. Just imagine that money can go to the person sitting in the bush somewhere, and they can also participate in the global economy. That's how significant this technology is. Anyone, I know people sitting in villages who have Bitcoin, who can actually purchase stuff online. You see how that's going to revolutionize the way we do business in that country. We've got so many resources here. We've got gold, we've got forest. Just imagine now if we can somehow convert those things into some kind of a digital asset that represents those things. Just imagine what that will do for foreign investment in the country. They can still invest in the country without being physically here, with the use of things like a cryptocurrency of a token that represents value. Okay, so I hope that's clear. Paulus? Yeah. Paulus has another question. Yes, yeah.
At the first place.
Yes.
Cash is still involved in order to buy into the.
Yeah.
If you want to come out too, you still need that cash as well.
Yeah. Well, now we see.
If you can exchange, if your supplier accepts the like crypto.
Yeah.
Then the case closed.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good question. Because see, there's two ways you can get cash. 3 ways. You can either go and exchange your kina to cash, or you can provide a good, or you can provide a service in exchange for cash. So you don't necessarily need cash to begin with. If, for example, you're an accountant, and like for us as accountants, the accreditation we get here is recognized globally. Yeah. So just imagine you as an accountant, you provide accounting services. You know, you don't necessarily need Bitcoin to crypto to begin with, but you tell your customers overseas, I provide this service. If I'm going to complete your financial statements and your income tax returns, you pay me this amount of Bitcoin. Here's my e-wallet address. Send it to this thing. That's why I said it's really appealing for people in the village because they may not have any money to begin with. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And then he ends up, I mean, they pay their employees or
Yeah. So eventually, if all our cash is going to be pumped into crypto, there won't be any cash in circulation. Everything's taken up now as crypto. So we'll be transferring crypto. There will essentially be no need for any cash anymore. Because it's just an exchange of value.
So yeah. As long as whoever is willing to exchange, they accept the Bitcoin now.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
Yeah.
It's yours.
Yeah. See, the problem with Bitcoin, and a lot of people will argue. So what backs Bitcoin? Is it backed by some kind of an asset? And the answer to that is no, it's not backed by anything. It's backed by us, the people who use it. We accept it as a means of transacting. And there's billions of people and companies now who are accepting it. So it's got value. Okay, but that's one part of it, right? The other aspect now is that a lot of people are moving from things like Bitcoin and those things into what they call stable coins. You take note of this one. This is very important. A stable coin is actually a coin, a cryptocurrency that's backed by something. For example, and this is what I was working on there. I was trying to build a cryptocurrency that is backed by actual gold reserves. So when people come and tell you, that's just a cryptocurrency, but it's worth nothing to me. When you tell them, are you sure about that? Because the amount of this coin that is circulating here is equivalent to the gold reserve sitting in the central bank here. See, so you could essentially have a cryptocurrency, stable coin, which is backed by a tangible asset. So a lot of countries around the world are moving towards that now. And for us as a country, Papua New Guinea, you just imagine what our value would be if we were to convert or value all our assets in the ground, all our resources, and put that as a currency. You just imagine how much it would be valued. How much investment would come into the country if we were to do something like that. You see. So yes, we've got Bitcoin there, it's valuable. But now the move now is for moving away from those type of currencies into actual stable coins. Like how we said that banks, when they printed money before, they printed an equivalent amount equivalent to the gold reserves that were sitting there. So what essentially we're doing is still put the money aside, leave the gold there, but create cryptocurrency equivalent to that and start using that as money. You see, so that's where the world is evolving now. Yeah, there are a few countries who, or some currencies out there now who actually they're backed by gold or some resource, and they call them stable coin, and rightfully so because the coin is stable. It's backed by an actual asset in the ground or somewhere. Okay, so that's why they call them stable coins. Yep. So I hope all of you are following our discussion. We're having a really meaningful discussion here in the CPA conference. Me and my friend Paul is here. There's a lot of discussion, and I think it's very important that platforms like this, like CPA, we discuss a lot of these technologies because, of course, it has implication within the financial space, which we all are part of. On top of that, we are moving into a digital economy. The ICT, Department of ICT is already starting to talk about e-government, okay? For your information, we also have a blockchain secretariat. Not a lot of people know this. There is a blockchain secretariat whose sole role is to talk technologies and how they're going to help our people. So people can say and start talking about the technology in a negative sense, but things are already happening on the ground. The discussion is taking place. On top of that, because of COVID, a lot of businesses have started to move online. For some people, I don't know about others, but for myself, during the COVID pandemic time, I actually picked up in business because I develop a lot of software online platforms like websites and e-commerce platforms. And I picked up because of the fact that because many people are unable to sit down and meet and transact, everybody wanted a website so that they can conduct business online. They can sell their goods and services online, you see. And a lot of these online platforms now have integration with things like blockchain and cryptocurrency. You can receive payments online right now. So essentially, you can develop all of those things. And the reason why I'm saying this is because once we start operating online, there is no way that we will avoid things like this. They will become part and parcel of our day-to-day lives. So whether you like it or not, it's very important that you start to gain an awareness and understand how it operates. Because if you do not, that is when people start to come into countries like us and start cheating our people. So you must understand the technology. You must understand how it operates. A big part of why we have this type of discussion is to educate people, because I've noticed recently that with the introduction of cryptos and blockchains, a lot of our people have been, cheated. They've been cheated because they do not understand the technology. Especially things like cryptocurrency and those forex, foreign exchange, all of those different platforms out there. They deal with the technology, and just because they see something called Bitcoin and crypto, they think it's legitimate. But you need to understand how things work. And that's why discussions like this is important, because you need to understand, you need to be able to ask questions to those people who are proposing these type of things to you. Because sometimes someone from the other part of the world can just come, oh, I can help you do this. Send me this amount of money. Once you send your money, that's it, it's gone. My advice is, if you want to deal with these technologies, you learn yourself and you do things on your own. Don't depend on third parties to do it. It's very important that we raise that awareness now so people have a basic understanding of who's out there, how these things work, how they can benefit me. Yep. Okay. So we're almost at 10:30 now. Does anyone have any questions online? Nigel, T, or Thor? We'll take a brief break after your questions.
Thank you.
Hello, Chris, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Who is this?
Nigel, this is Nigel here.
Hi, Nigel. Good
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And yourself?
Yeah, I'm very well. It's a very interesting topic, and I'm glad that CPA PNG brought it on board, especially something new that is going around the world today. And I think just from the way you're presenting it, obviously there's a lot of goods to it.
Yep.
And I think in terms of the negative side of it, I think there might be sort of the government needs to look at addressing some of those things that you mentioned, some of the cons,
Yep.
so to speak. So my sort of not a question, but just a point in terms of tax monitoring purposes. The central bank sort of regulates sort of payments that are going out of the country. They monitor, like if it's a dividend system that sort of traces the source of revenue and whether it's been taxed or not. With this Bitcoin thing, since one of its or this blockchain and its cryptocurrency, one of the characteristics that you just mentioned, that that enormity,
Yeah.
It's like nobody can trace the the person that is doing the transaction, or even the nature of that income that is going out of the country. So I think that is sort of some of the things that if the government can sort of find answers to, I believe they might be able to sort of sort of widely regulate this in a way that they can encourage, because just from the way you're presenting it, it's going to bring revolution to the way business is done around the world. It's so efficient, and just from the way you presented so far. So I think sort of some of these cons, if they can find answers to some of these issues, I believe in the near future we might sort of see it being regulated and being accepted by most countries around the world.
Great point, Nigel.
Yeah.
So Nigel is just commented on how, with the foreign exchange and the tax implications are, and how it's all. Well, right now I can tell you with things like that's a really good question, Nigel. I like how you said it. Right now with things like Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, because they're decentralized, they're not controlled by our banks, they're not controlled by anyone. So, that's a lot of the reason why our central banks and our commercial banks like BSP and Kina Bank are really, they put the brakes on, and they've restricted a lot of transactions with crypto, because right now there's really no regulation as to like when money leaves the country. Yeah, if you were to purchase digital assets abroad, or buy them, store them in, and do that transaction, there's really no way to manage that, the regulation side of things. So the previous part of my presentation, I think there are two options there that we can explore. The first one, and I think the most important one, is the KYC requirement, where, for example, if you're going to be doing a transaction, or if you hold any cryptocurrency or crypto account, you might have a KYC, or know your customer component, that identifies you as the person doing the transaction. So that's already part and parcel of the conventional banking system now that we have. But they need to take that up a notch now with regard to things like cryptocurrency and foreign exchange. That's one way to address that problem. Another way to do it is just something that I've been working on. I've actually developed a cryptocurrency called Kumul Coin, specific to Papua New Guinea. So the reason why I'm saying that is, for example, if we had some kind of a currency that represents Papua New Guinea on the foreign exchange, then we can build the regulatory aspects into it, inclusive of your KYC. So instead of just being decided and ignore it, people very smart, they will still find a way to do those transactions. So we need to be able to regulate it, even if it means developing our own version of a Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency that is regulated by the government or the regulators here in Papua New Guinea. That way we can better monitor the movement of money out, because we can stop anything else, and we can people to run all of their transactions on that system, where all those KYC and all those other requirements are met. They are traceable. We can monitor them, and we can ensure that people are doing the right thing, but still have the convenience of transferring money out to other parts of the world, within the country or wherever it is they may wish to, without breaking any laws. So those are just two options that I'm sure there's so many other different options out there, but from a technical and a software coding perspective, that would be one of the options that we could always explore. But thank you for your question, Nigel.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else before we break up for morning tea?
Christopher Thor speaking. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Thor.
Just one quick question. You in your commentary, you mentioned that PNG had a number of people burnt so far. Is there any specific, allowed for anonymity, is there any specific examples you might be able to tell us about?
Yeah. Sorry, Thor, just the first part of your question again.
Just in relation to, you mentioned that a number of PNG people had been scammed or had been had bad experiences with
Yeah.
Is there one or two simple examples you might be able to inform us about?
Yes. There's been a growing number of scams relating to the use of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and blockchains. I think one of the biggest ones, there are a lot of people from especially the outside of Papua New Guinea who are emailing via through Facebook or other social means Papua New Guineans who are, showing interest in the technology and, just promising them to act as account managers and things like that. So what they instruct their victims here on the ground is to send money to certain individuals or to buy the Bitcoin themselves and to transfer that to a particular e-wallet address. And then that's once the money leaves their e-wallet address or their bank accounts, and that's it. They just disappear off. So that's one example. And I've noticed that those cases have increased in the past couple of years. That's one example. Another one, this is one that has been happening a lot lately. There are people from the outside who are using Papua New Guineans. So for example, they're approaching one Papua New Guinean and using their bank account details. And they're speaking to other Papua New Guineans, advising them that the first person they spoke to will be depositing money into their account from within Papua New Guinea. And then they will then use that Papua New Guinean's, the second Papua New Guinean's account to actually buy the cryptocurrency and send it to an anonymous e-wallet. So what essentially is happening is one person is collecting money on behalf of someone from outside of the country, and then he's transferring that money into another Papua New Guinean to buy the cryptocurrency and then sending that money to another side of the country. So both are oblivious to what's happening. One is expecting something to go into their account, and the other one is transferring money to account which they are expecting an investment to come through on their behalf. So those are those type of things that are taking place inside the country. So as I said, it's very important that this discussion needs to happen, because a lot of our people, the current of our economy is such that people are looking at ways to make multiple sources of income, and they look at things like cash FX and all of those trading. A lot of this is in the form of trading, crypto trading, and all those things online. So a lot of them are scammed there. So it's very important we have this discussion so people know, and they can. My advice is spend what you can spend, but do your own research. You understand the technology, what drives the technology, and mostly to know the person that you're dealing with. If there's anything that you pick up from this part of the discussion, is that if you're going to be dealing with somebody, you need to be able to see that person. You need to know where he is, even if it means calling that person up and having a video conversation with that person. KYC is also important here. They can show you their ID. They can stand with the ID on a video call, and they can talk to you real time, so you know that that's exactly that person. You know who you're dealing with, and it safeguards you in the future, so you know who to go to when something goes wrong.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Yeah, thank you, Thor. That's a good question. One last one before we go to T. You'll find that a lot of Papua New Guineans have already started experimenting with the technology. When I first started, there was literally nobody that was talking about it, and every time I'd get on stage and talk about it, people would look at me as if I came from another planet. But and that's right. A lot of our people have been tricked and lied to over the years, and it's my role. I see my role is to educate people on the merits, the pros and the cons, so that they are better informed. Because whether we like it or not, that's where the world is moving. So we might as well, build that awareness within ourselves and start bracing ourselves for what's to come. Surrounding things like blockchain and cryptocurrencies. As I said, the technology is like any technology is always evolving. So what we talk about today, tomorrow might be something totally different. But at least we understand the basic principles that govern these technologies and how they relate to our day-to-day lives. And I think as accountants and as a professional body, it is very important for us to also take on board a lot of this knowledge and these understandings, because cryptocurrency and blockchains will, in the not too distant future, be a day-to-day part of our conversations. Because basically, as you've seen from the first part of my presentation, a lot of technology and applications that are attached with the blockchain are related to finance. So you've got things like cryptocurrencies, record management systems, NID systems, things like voting systems, healthcare systems, educational systems. Other parts of the world have already started building systems using the technology. An example would be Estonia. Estonia is one country that have already initiated an e-government. So everything there in Estonia is electronic, from your medical records, the education, even the use of blockchain and cryptocurrencies and the like. So there's a lot of things happening around the world. It's also pleasing to note that our agencies like the Bank of Papua New Guinea have also taken heed of what's happening around the rest of the world and have started the discussion in the country as well. A few years ago, I think 2 years ago, I was part of a cohort that were invited by the Bank of Papua New Guinea to undergo training with regard to blockchain. And we did a hackathon for 24 hours. So we didn't sleep for 24 hours. We spent the whole day coding software, which would serve as an exchange where you could buy your currencies online and transfer. It was essentially an e-wallet running off a technology called Ethereum, which is another blockchain, which we created and tested. So the technology is already here. This was 2-3 years ago. We were fortunate that the governor and the deputy governors were there to witness the demonstration technology. So this technology is not far from us. There's Papua New Guineans who've already developed this. So rest assured that we have people here in the country who are well versed in these technologies. We're not all experts, but we know a thing or two about the technology, and we're able to come together. So having said that, just reiterating my point that the technologies. A little bit about myself too, and I think John already introduced me. I'm an accountant by profession, and I have been fortunate enough to follow my passion into the ICT sector to develop solutions like this. So I am learning just as all of you are. I've had a lot of experience in the space too, and I've seen the growth of the technology just triple over the past couple of years. And I'm glad to be taking my foot off the accelerator now and watch as other people, Papua New Guineans are, taking the lead to bring out the awareness about these technologies. So in our previous discussion, we talked about how blockchains work. I hope that was clear. Cryptocurrencies, they work in the same way. Same process. There's always someone initiating a transaction. Then they have a validation process. And then the transaction is complete. And then the transfer takes place. But instead of information, it would be a cryptocurrency called a Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever the case may be. As I said, there is over 1,000 cryptocurrencies in circulation today, all around the world. Some countries have adopted their own, others are in the process of legislating the use of cryptocurrency in their countries. Our neighbors Australia are also in that process too. The Senate have already started on the legislation around blockchain and cryptocurrency in their nation too. So the technology is here. So as you can see, how cryptocurrencies work is very similar to the essence of how a blockchain works. And understandably so, because they're both the same thing, more or less. The technology that underpins the use of cryptocurrency is just blockchain in itself, right? So let me just give you an example. And this is how I always illustrate this example with how cryptocurrencies work on a blockchain. And I use this example because I believe it is an example that everyone can relate to, and it's something that people can easily follow. Now, we have a scenario here where there's two people. For example, myself and another person. And I have a picture of an apple on my computer. It's a normal picture. It's a JPEG of an apple. It's a yummy looking apple. It's red, it's fresh, and it's ready to be eaten. It's very nicely. It's a painting. And the other person sitting across the room sees the painting on my laptop and he wants to purchase that painting. He wants to own that painting because it's a unique painting. He's never seen that painting anywhere before in his life. So he asked me if he can buy it. He can buy that painting. I said, sure. You give me 10 kina and I'll email you the picture of that painting that you like so much. So he gives me 10 kina. I send him a copy of that painting. Okay. He receives the painting, he's very happy, and he goes on and he starts telling her, bro, I'm very fortunate. I have the only picture of this painting in the whole wide world. My question is, can he honestly is the only owner of that painting at that point in time, after I've sent it to him? Anyone online? Can he say that? Can he make that statement? And why? He can't make that statement? And why?
No,
Why can he
obviously
make
not.
that statement? Oh, yep.
Well, there's two paintings.
No.
Yep. Thor, that's a good one. I believe I heard Nigel say something. Nigel, did you say something?
Yeah, I said that he cannot make that statement.
Yep. Okay. Well, the answer to that is no, he cannot say that. And you are both right. Because there's a copy here. I can go up to the next person, go to my sent items, and tell him, hey, look, I've got a picture of this painting. No one else has a painting. You want this? And I could sell it to multiple people. None of them would know that, I'm cheating the whole lot of them because it's the same painting, but because I have a copy sitting in my sent items, I can just send it to anyone and claim that it's the only one of its kind, right? So the problem here with technology, what that was in the past, was the issue of duplication. That's why money was never really digitized in the past, because how could they transfer money from one person to another electronically without the issue of duplication? Because what the blockchain does is that when I send, if I'm on a blockchain in my e-wallet, and I send a token or a digital asset from my wallet to the next person, all of its attributes and all of its histories up until that point when it was sitting in my e-wallet will be transferred from my e-wallet and sent to the next person. It'll be encrypted and time-stamped and dated, and it'll be sent to the next person. And I will no longer have that asset sitting in my wallet. The record will be there on the ledger, but I will not say, I cannot say now that I own it because I've already transferred it, plus all of its history and its attributes to the next person. So that is an example of how the technology is used for money. Because you can just imagine, I'm sending you a digital asset. There's a problem of duplication. I sent you the money, but I also have a copy of it sitting in the original place where it came from. What blockchain does is it completely removes it and all of its history from my wallet and sends it to the next person once a new block is created. And all of those nodes on that network come to consensus that yes, it no longer belongs to me, it's sent to the next person. Yeah. And it eliminates the issue of duplication. Duplication has always been a stumbling block for developers until such time blockchain came along. Now you can transfer pretty much anything. You can transfer NFT, which is what they call a non-fungible token, which is a piece of art. You can sell and trade art. You can transfer, you can copyright things like music, because there's no such thing as duplication now, because once it leaves one person, it can go to another. So ownership is very clearly defined. So it works well with money. Cryptocurrencies work very well with money because you need that type of security, the level of security with regard to digital, especially things like money. Because you cannot afford to have 2 10 kinas floating around, 250 kinas. Because imagine if everyone has a duplication, is sending money, there's duplications everywhere. How do you manage money? You know, money is based on the principle of scarcity. Supply and demand, things like that. So if I send it to you and I still have it here, what does that do to our financial systems, right? So what blockchain allows us to do is transfer money or transfer digital assets from one person to the next person, okay? And that's why immutability is also very important, and traceability. On a ledger, you can trace. Immutability, meaning once the money is gone, I cannot go back onto that record and do changes again to suit my own needs. Once the money is gone, it's gone. And that's part of the decentralized nature of it. If it was centralized, yes, someone could go to the back end somewhere, hack into the system and transfer the money back and do whatever they need to do to, you know, cheat the system. But with a decentralized system, that is very difficult to do, especially when everyone has ownership of the network. Because the network will not come to a consensus because someone is obviously doing the wrong thing and it will not allow the transaction to take place. Okay. So the diagram there is just for your own benefit. Again, it looks very similar to the blockchain one. It's pretty straightforward. We will not get into the programming aspects of cryptocurrency and the enabling technologies that you need. Maybe on our next presentation, we can touch, or next session sometime in the future, we can talk about some of the technologies. If you are keen on developing blockchains and cryptocurrencies, we can guide you in the right direction so you understand the technologies that you need, the type of skill sets that you need to acquire in order for you to work within that space and develop those type of solutions. Okay, the next 3 slides are just some comparisons between things like digital currencies and the fiat currencies that we're so familiar with. Okay. If you can see on your left for the first point, things like Bitcoin cryptocurrencies, they have a limited supplies. They conform to. Okay, so that's the first point. That's the distinction between cryptocurrencies and the normal fiat currency. The second point, and that's a pretty obvious one, digital currencies are digital. They're represented by a cryptographic address. You cannot, it's not something tangible where you can smell or touch or feel. It's digital. Whereas physical currency, yep, it's something tangible we can hold, we can taste, if you like that kind of thing, tasting money. You can smell the money. So those are the distinctions there. Cryptocurrencies are issued by computers. Software, the programming surrounding things like Bitcoin, for example. It's a very technical, a very complicated form of programming. I've had the privilege of, at least going through and trying to understand certain aspects of it, but it's a very large piece of body of work, coding. But essentially, it's issued by a computer. What happened is the person or the people that created the first ever cryptocurrency of Bitcoin created one instance on one computer. And then as more people came into the network, the currency started to spread. And the copy of that one ledger started to spread amongst all of those computers. And now you have essentially a whole global network of computers or nodes that contain the same information. Yeah. And that's why we talked about convenience and international transactions in our previous discussion. That's why it's relatively easy to transfer from me to someone in the US, because we're all essentially in one network, in a safe and secure network. Whereas governments, they issue fiat currency like the Kinas, the Toyas, the Australian dollars, US dollars, they're all issued by the government. Okay, and in order to transact, we have to come to some kind of an exchange or some foreign exchange to allow us to transfer from one currency to another. So that's the difference between cryptocurrencies and fiat currency. The fact that cryptocurrencies are issued by computers, whereas fiat money is issued by the government. The next point, and I think we've discussed this as well already, the decentralized nature of cryptocurrencies. No one controls cryptocurrencies. So an example would be in Papua New Guinea. Our Bank of Papua New Guinea has put out a couple of statements limiting or discouraging people to use things like cryptocurrency. That's fine. But at the end of the day, they really cannot control its use because it's not run by the Bank of Papua New Guinea. It's a totally different technology altogether, which they do not have access to. They can only provide guidance for the use of the technology in the country. It is run by everyone throughout the world. It's a global currency, and its very nature as being decentralized means that it is not run by any one government. And that's why a lot of people resonate with it, because maybe they're not happy with some of the decisions their governments are making. Yeah. They don't like the type of regulations surrounding their existing government, or they may not like the type of bank fees that they're being charged. Whatever the case may be, those are just some examples as to why people leave the conventional banking system and shift over to things like cryptocurrencies. And that's also related to the final point there. Bitcoin especially, we are the one that gives it its value. Supply and demand. If the demand is high, the value of Bitcoin goes up. It's just a simple equation of supply. It's a matter of supply and demand. That's all it is. Whereas fiat, it's valued or it's determined through market regulations and what the commercial banks and the central banks, all their regulations are. They are the ones who determine all of those things. Yeah. Yeah, we have a question. Yep.
What's the maximum? How do they determine the maximum number that they have to produce?
That's a good question. I've forgotten the total coin supply, but with things like cryptocurrency, there is a certain supply. There's a certain amount of crypto in circulation. Bitcoin especially. It will not go over that amount. And how the network or the system is devised is like this. I said the programming is designed in a way to replicate scarcity, the scarcity model of money. Meaning, I mean, supply and back to supply and demand. The less available it is, the higher the demand goes up, because it's very rare. It's a scarce resource. So how the programming is done with things like Bitcoin, they have a set amount in circulation. Now, every couple of years, I'm not sure, I think it was 2 or 4 years, the programming is designed in a way that every 4 years, you know how I was telling you there are people who mine Bitcoin in the background to maintain the integrity of a blockchain. What they do is they're mining very advanced mathematical equations using the hashing power of their computers. The hashing power is taken from, they call them GPUs, graphics processing units. They are certain, they don't necessarily use the CPU of a computer, they use the GPUs, and that gives them the power they need to hash these very complex mathematical equations. Okay, so every time they confirm a block, first came out, anyone on your computer, you could mine it on your phone right now, you would make substantial amount of money when it first came into the scene. But as time goes by, the coding is such that as more people come on board, the difficulty doubles and it triples. So it's much more difficult now to mine Bitcoin, simply because of the fact that more computers come on board and the programming is such that every certain number of years, the difficulty becomes much harder. So you need more advanced equipment or resources now. And that's why, remember I was talking about proof of work, that's the consensus mechanism that the programming uses. The proof of work is the work that these machines have to do in order to confirm those blocks and to maintain integrity. So those people who contribute those resources to the network, they are awarded with certain incentives for providing the computational power. Okay, so to answer your question, the coin supply is limited. It's a set amount, but they're still in the process. It hasn't actually reached the total coin supply yet. It's still working its way towards it, but because it's developed in a way that it conforms to the scarcity model of money, the more that the coin supply increases, the difficulty also increases as well. So you just think about it this way. And they call them mining rigs. Those people who provide those kind of computational power, they call them miners. And they relate them to actual mining. You just imagine, I go into a piece of land for the first time looking for gold. And if it hasn't been mined before, on the surface, I can just pick gold off like that. It's easy because I can see it. But then when word gets out, or once the supply of the gold on the surface starts to deplete, I'm going to have to invest in some more heavy duty equipment to start getting down deeper into the ground. You see, so the difficulty level goes up. I used to run a mining rig. I went to Singapore a few years back. I actually built one of those machines in Singapore. I commissioned it, I tested it, and I was mining for Bitcoin in Singapore. It was a huge rig. And then I dismantled it. I packed everything in my suitcase. I brought it back to Papua New Guinea. I was running it here. But the only challenge here in Papua New Guinea is, though that equipment has to run 24/7, 7 days a week. It uses up power, and it has to be kept in an air-conditioned room. And you can just see some of those things. Our environment is not conducive to running those kind of machineries because firstly, internet is not reliable. Power is just ridiculously high, the cost, and ridiculously unreliable, right? And air conditioning, right? A typical Papua New Guinean, can they afford air conditioning in the house 24/7? No, it's quite expensive. And then again, the power system, the power availability. So it was doing okay. I was mining next to 50 kina a day. I could mine 50 kinas worth of Bitcoin every day. But it became the cost benefit to me every month with regard to the power that I'm using, the air conditioning, the internet. didn't justify me running that machine anymore because the cost far outweighed the benefit that I was getting, the return on my investment. So I dismantled the machine. It's just sitting there at home doing nothing. So if anyone's interested in buying it, let me know. If you've got all the resources, if you're in the highlands, just utilize some renewable energies in energy, then you can start mining your own coin. So I hope that answers your question. Okay. Okay. Does anyone else? So I'm just checking our chat. Again, another slide here. Just some comparisons between crypto. Now we'll start talking a bit more about the crypto now. I think we understand the fundamental building blocks of a blockchain and how that relates back to the. Now we're just highlighting some of those differences between the two. Again, cryptocurrency is a virtual currency that is encrypted and issued using blockchain technology, whereas fiat are coins and bills that are distributed and used as a means of exchange according to the laws of the issuing country. And I think that's understandable, and that's a lot of the reason why we have a lot of issues now in the country because regulators of cryptocurrency and of course that protect users of the technology from people, scammers and the like. Secondly, cryptocurrency is operated and managed using distributed storage through the peer-to-peer method. P2P is simply peer-to-peer. When you do create for yourself an e-wallet or a cryptocurrency account, your own bank. Just imagine that. You are your own bank. You maintain access, you manage your funds the way you want. You're not placing any regulations or restrictions on yourself. You are in full control. And it's on a network, it's a peer-to-peer. Anything that's done on a blockchain or using cryptocurrencies and other digital assets is done peer-to-peer. So, for example, if I'm with someone else on the same network and we have the same cryptocurrency, he can send me cryptocurrency in payment for good or service. It does. We're on the same network. We can do that. Okay, to our next point again. I think that was very clear in a previous slide. Cryptocurrencies are not under government control. And Nigel made a good point of this in our last part of this session. He talked about some of the Forex and a lot of those international transactions and the testings. And I also made mention of why it was important for the government to get involved, especially now, and start building some of these frameworks. Because as we move into the future, we might be left behind because we do not have the regulations to support the use of guidance. We can follow when we're using this type of technologies. And once the world starts to become enshrined with the use of things like cryptocurrencies and blockchains, we need to then find out how we're going to fit into the whole equation of things. So my suggestion for us to start looking at some of these regulations. We also talked about anonymity with regard to the conventional banking system. When you transfer, there's always a trace to the name of the company that in which the funding is transferred, money is transferred from one person to the next. There is also the case with cryptocurrency, but your identity, your company identity is not clearly visible. You're only represented by a string of numbers, which represent your e-wallet number. And that is called your, in the blockchain world, that is called your public key. You've got two different keys, your public and your private or secret key. The secret key is what you would use to access your Bitcoin e-wallet. The public key is a string of numbers called an e-wallet that everybody sees. All right. So if I'm going to sell you a service, the first thing that you will ask me is, okay, I'm going to pay you. What's your e-wallet address? Where do I send the money to? It's the same as saying, what's your bank account details? When I say talk about e-wallet address, it's essentially talking about your bank account or your e-wallet. Where do I send the money to? Okay. So when you create an e-wallet for yourself, the first thing it'll do is it'll ask you to register, provide some kind of ID, but it will generate a unique public license or public key that you can share to any Tom, Dick, and Harry. You can share it with every man and his dog. That's public. Everyone can see that. But for your case, you will also have a certain key which is unique to you, which you mustn't share with anybody. That's the unique key to access that wallet. Okay, some advantages and disadvantages. What is the advantage between having an e-wallet address on a blockchain and having your conventional bank account with the bank? Now, both have got their merits, their pros and their cons. Does anyone want to share? Does anyone have anything to say about that? So firstly, as I said, when you are on a blockchain and you have your own e-wallet, you are essentially your own bank. So what that means is all the responsibilities of your existing bank are now put on your shoulders. I'm not saying with regard to, managing accounts, and that's all done by the actual e-wallet itself. But I'm saying with regard to access. Let's create an e-wallet address. You will be given credentials and a secret code or some secret phrases that you must keep. Now, in the event that you lose this secret key and your secret phrase, there's no one for help. That is the problem with using e-wallets and cryptocurrency. Once you lose your secret key to your e-wallet address, you cannot go to anyone for help because that is entirely your responsibility as the owner of that e-wallet. And there are two main things, your secret key and your passphrase in case you forget your secret key. So there's two levels of that you have in order for you to access your account. The first one is your secret key, which you must know. It's a password of some sort. But in the event that you forget that, there's certain words that you have to input into your e-wallet in a certain arrangement, which they will give to you when you first register. If you do not have those words or they've been lost or you don't know where you keep them, there's no way for you to access your e-wallet. There's no one, you cannot call the people at BPNG or BSP because it's not their system. That's the disadvantage. So I know of a few people. There was one guy that I knew a few years back. I think he was from Buka or somewhere in the NGI. He bought Bitcoin when it first came. He invested quite a substantial amount. And back then, the price of one Bitcoin would have been a few Toya. Now, one Bitcoin is almost 100,000. You see how far it's reached. And it varies. It's very speculative, so the price goes up and comes down. But it sits around a 50, 30, it was sitting between the 30,000, 40,000 for a few years. Then it shot up to almost 60 to 70,000 for one Bitcoin. And this fellow, he must have invested a substantial amount of his retirement on Bitcoin when this came out. But because back then it was not really valued, the value wasn't there. It was only recently when the price went up, he would be sitting on a few 100 million worth of Bitcoin. But the problem was he lost his secret key and his passphrase. You can just imagine the regret now that this fellow is living with. He would literally be a billionaire, Bitcoin billionaire right now, a Papua New Guinean. They came to me and they asked me, is there any way we can access this? And I said, that is the beauty, but that is also the disadvantage of this system. The beauty in that no one else can hack into your system. It's the most secure. But the only problem is it's so secure. Get your password. So at all costs, don't share it with anybody else. Keep it printed out if you need to unlock it in a safe somewhere. So that's one of the disadvantages of having an e-wallet account, especially with regard to your credentials. The advantage that the bank has over cryptocurrency, apart from it being around a lot longer, is that if you lock yourself out of your account, you can simply just call the help desk. I lock myself out of my account. Please send me an email and I'll reset my account. It's easy. You can always go to somebody and they will help you. But because cryptocurrency is decentralized, there's no central authority there to fall back on if you need support. You always got that support there with the banks. So that's one thing that you must also take into consideration, and you must also be very much aware of if you decide to go down this road. Okay, our next slide also reiterates a lot of what we spoke about in the previous part of our discussion. Feel free if there's anything else that you want to comment on, our friends online and those in the room, with regard to some of the distinguishing features. Again, this next slide is very similar, so I will not dwell on those things. One thing that you must also know, and this is from my own experiences too, is that especially with regard to cryptocurrency, especially things like Bitcoin and Ethereum, if you are to operate or own such e-wallets, you must have an Android phone, or you must have a laptop of some sort where you can access your account. You will also have to have internet connectivity. Okay. With your conventional money, fiat money that you can touch and it sits in your wallet, you have it anytime. Whereas with cryptocurrencies, it's sitting in your wallet, but you can only access it if you are online, because you will have to connect with the rest of the network as one of its users in order to pull out your record based on your credentials. So that's one thing that you must always remember there too. You will need internet connectivity. And a smartphone is probably the best way for you to store your cryptocurrency in an e-wallet. Has anyone used a cryptocurrency wallet before? In the room? No? Anyone online? I just want to gauge where our audience is online with regard to their experiences with utilizing or using or setting up an e-wallet. Okay.
No.
No.
Not an experience.
Okay. Okay. Well, setting up an e-wallet is not a very difficult thing to do. It's a very straightforward process, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of different options out there, depending on your needs and what attracts you the most. For things like Bitcoin, there's a Bitcoin e-wallet. There's also one called a blockchain e-wallet called blockchain.com. It also contains multiple currencies too. You've got things like Ethereum, all of these other coins as well that are sitting on the coin market, which a lot of these service providers now entertain. You've got things like Coin Mama, Cointree in Australia. You've got Binance. Most of these platforms too, apart from serving as an e-wallet where you can save and you can store your cryptocurrency, they also trade. trade crypto. Yeah, so you can trade crypto and you can make some money from that too, but be warned, I've been this for some time. Trading is not one of my favorite things to do because you really need to understand, a lot of the signals and a lot of those intricate details that come with trading. If you're a trader, then good for you. You do the same thing, but on the crypto front. But I would consider myself a risk taker, but I prefer to hold on to my coins and wait for the price to go up for now until I can with some of that trading knowledge. Yeah. So that's that. Some notable e-wallets, as I said, CoinMama, CoinTree, Binance. There's another good one called Jax, JAXX.com. You can have a look at those wallets. Most of these wallets too, you can download on your mobile phone. So you can have them, you can access them online using your laptop or tablets, but you can also download them straight on your mobile phone. Most of them, if you're going to create an e-wallet, most of them will ask as part of the KYC requirements that you provide some form of ID. Okay, so you must be prepared. I recommend you have your passport available to you at that time because it's a recognized government. I have multiple accounts using my passport in the past, even my NID and I think driver's license too, but it depends on the platform that you are accessing. Also note that a lot of these platforms now, apart from the KYC requirement, they may ask for additional information, but most of them will allow you to create an account without your KYC, but you will only be able to transact certain amounts. They will only allow you to transact certain amounts, and you will only be given the opportunity to transfer above, say, 500 or 5,000 USD in a month. They will only give you that access until they know who you are. So you will provide some ID to them. So just a bit of a discussion there surrounding e-wallets. Does anyone have any questions with regard to e-wallets? While I'm still on this topic before I move on. An e-wallet, as I said, once you start delving cryptocurrency, you will need an e-wallet. It's like your bank account. So you cannot say you are dealing with cryptocurrency. For those of you listening online, if someone comes to you and says, oh, they do this and do that, and you ask them if they have an e-wallet, and they say they don't have one, they're lying to you. Because if you're in that space, you need to have an e-wallet if you're dealing with crypto. So that's a word of advice, just to distinguish the genuine people from those con people out there.
I have a question.
Yes, Nigel.
My question is, how do I know the genuineness of the e-wallets if I go online? Because now you're sort of mentioning a number of them, but you mentioned earlier that there's a whole range of them online.
Yeah.
So how do I know whether a e-wallet is genuine or not?
Yeah. That's a good one.
Or if there's any need to understand whether any wallet is genuine or not.
Yeah. Good question. Thank you, Nigel. Well, for me, the ones I mentioned are ones that I've tried and tested, and for my own purposes. There are others out there. Good places to go and look is to just go online and just do a search. You'll find that a lot of the ones that I've spoken about will be in the top 10. So you normally look at some of the top 10 wallets. You can even go to a place called a Coin Market Cap. So that place there, it normally has a listing of all the coins. And normally it will have suggestions as to which type of wallet would suit that type of coin to. So you can use some of those resources online as well. But again, different wallets serve different purposes. Like there are some wallets that are specific to trade crypto. So the wallet is designed in a way that works with your trading aspirations. Whereas there's some other wallets there that they're just purely to store your cryptocurrencies. There's no special feature; it just stores, and it allows you to transfer from one person to the next or to receive money. So you just be very, you do your own research. There's also a place called, I forgot what it's called, Trustpilot or something there too. You can go onto that web, trustpilot.com. You can go there and just type in the name of the wallet, and you've got people giving their reviews. You go to those places where people review, and you can understand what challenges that people are facing with regard to different types of wallets. But essentially, a wallet is, for me, I stick to the wallets that have been around the longest, because I know that they've stood the test of time. They're still around because they are doing a good job. There are a lot of new ones that come up. There's a lot of hype, and then in a few months' time, they die out. I would generally stick to those ones that have been around since the beginning of the crypto revolution. They're like the Bitcoin wallet, bitcoin.com, blockchain. Blockchain.com is a website. It's a wallet, and it also has a wallet built into it as well. It's an exchange, blockchain.com. I would recommend that as the first one that you'd probably try out. It also has a mobile app tied into the same web. You can access your wallet via your laptop, computer, or your mobile phone. So those are the two. Even Binance is good. Binance.com. There's one for US and one for, I think, Asia. I use the one for the US, but again, KYC is very important. You must have your IDs there. If you're going to be purchasing crypto, you must have a card, a Visa card under your name, which is the name that you use on your passport. So everything has to tie. They look at all of these things if you're trying to get into that space. If you want to buy crypto, all your credentials, all your documents. If you have a passport, say my name Christopher Vagalia on my passport, and the Visa card says Christopher Vagalia with a B instead of a V, they will not allow you to. You will not fulfill those requirements because your names are different. So another thing too for you to look at is the level of security for each wallet. If you have a wallet in mind, do your research. There are some wallets that have been there. Some have some vulnerabilities, some security issues too. So if you go onto those sites like Trustpilot and all those other sites that talk about the different wallets, you'll find people who talk about some of these issues, whether you want to go into and go do something else. Does that answer your question, Nigel?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yes, Paulus.
Bitcoin wallet users in the country system.
Okay, that's a good question. Policies asked the question, are you able to identify how many users are specific to Papua New Guinea or not? That will depend. That will depend. I know there's a place, okay, when you have, for example, you have a Bitcoin wallet. Most wallets have, they call it a block explorer. A block explorer. A block explorer is where the ledgers are kept for everyone to see. So if you go into that site I told you about, blockchain.com, and you create yourself an e-wallet there, it comes with its own block explorer. The block explorer is simply a place, for example, if you're on your e-wallet will have all the transactions, money that's coming in, money that's going out. What you can do, you can simply click on one of those transactions, put it in its block explorer. It will tell you everything about the transaction, where the transaction came from, who it came from initially, right down to the beginning, right all the way to what they call a Genesis block. Like a Genesis block is the first ever transaction, like in the Bible, the book of Genesis, right? The book of Genesis is the first book. So the Genesis block is the initial block. So when you're looking at a transaction, it will always trace back to the original, which is the Genesis block, up until it comes to your point. So to say that our question here is whether we can see how many people in Papua New Guinea or not, that will depend on how the block explorer has been designed. Block explorer will contain all the transactions, but it is up to the developer now whether they've developed the interface to actually show where these transactions are, who's from what country. I'm sure with the technology now, that's very relatively easy to do. Yeah, you can do that now. I know a service called CoinMama. CoinMama is a very good service. The problem that I have with CoinMama now is that I think they've stopped for whatever reason, but they had a really good interface. So with all your transactions, you could see the country exactly where the transaction was initiated. And it'll plot those points on a Google map. So you know exactly who the money is coming, where the money is going, where the person is that's receiving the money. So yes, it has that capability, but I'm not sure if it will be able to generate statistics with regard to the number of users in Papua New Guinea. They will have the database because obviously when you register, it will ask you which country you're registering from. So it goes back to the service provider whether they want to provide that information for us to see or not. They're at liberty to do that. Yeah. I hope that answers your question. Anyone else have a question with regard to e-wallets? Okay, good. So we'll move on. So as we've discussed, in order for you to have cryptocurrency, you must have an e-wallet, you must be online, you must have some kind of a device that allows you to access your e-wallet via the internet. Those are the essential things. Our only challenge here in Papua New Guinea that I see is just our connectivity. But I think it is slowly improving. We've really improved over the past couple of years. And internet is slowly becoming more affordable and more reliable. So we have everything going for us. So it's not why anyone living in, for example, the urban areas cannot access or create an e-wallet for them for investment or for transaction purposes. Okay, if there's no questions, let's move on to we'll just touch briefly about some of the regulation in Papua New Guinea with regard to crypto and blockchain. Now, I can tell you now from my own knowledge and experience that there is no regulation presently with regard to the use of blockchain and cryptocurrencies within Papua New Guinea. There is literally nothing there that I know of. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I also do understand that the Bank of Papua New Guinea is in the process of exploring a lot of these things. They've already developed a number of softwares. There was a identification card, I think it was called UTRU, that the bank had created, and that ran over blockchain. They've run it, and I think they were trying to integrate that with the MD system. But I'm not sure how the developments are going with that one. Now back to the policy. The only thing right now that I'm aware of that the bank has initiated is that item there at the bottom of your screen, which is the sandbox, the regulatory sandbox at the bottom there. There was a PNG regulatory sandbox was officially launched on the 4th of December, 2019, and welcomes new innovation to benefit citizens of Papua New Guinea. And that basically revolved around financial inclusion. Now, this particular regulatory sandbox came off the back of that 24-hour hackathon that we did. Prior to that, I was at odds with the Bank of Papua New Guinea because of the fact that there was really no regulation. So people like us in the development space always hit a brick wall because we developed the solutions, but we were always waiting for the banks to come and catch up with us. But I was pleased that they actually, up until that point, they invited us, myself and a number of developers, the guys from Kumulsoft, Papua New Guinea, Marsh, and Paul, some good friends of mine, some brilliant programmers, Papua New Guineans. They own that Kumulsoft, which is an asset management system which they developed in the country, which some government institutions are using now. There was another young female, the APAC winner for Papua New Guinea, the young lady, Crystal Kewe. She's also another brilliant mind. She came on board too. So they put us all in a room and we developed this cryptocurrency. We called it Dikina for digital Kina. It was something that we just developed based on the, but it was essentially a fully fledged exchange, a cryptocurrency in itself. We could even mint cryptocurrencies like they minted fiat currency at the factories wherever they are in mint condition. We could also mint our own cryptocurrencies too in a permissioned blockchain that allowed us to do that. And then on the back of that, then they realized that, you know, in order for them to progress, they needed to work with people like us in the space, because we were experimenting with a lot of these technologies. And on the 4th of December, we were all invited to the Hilton Hotel where they launched the sandbox. Now the sandbox is an environment that they've allocated for people like me, myself, software developers operating with emerging technologies like blockchain and cryptocurrencies, with the focus again on financial inclusion. So the aim of this regulatory sandbox was to enable people like myself to continuously develop solutions, but within a controlled environment. Okay, so what that allowed us to do is develop solutions and then bring those solutions to Bank of Papua New Guinea and say, look, we've developed this solution to address this part of our Papua New Guinea's development agenda, whether it be financial inclusion or this or that. So they gave us that freedom to do all those things in a controlled environment. And on the back of those, then you have things like regulation, all of those things that come as part of this development process. So right now, this is where they're at. I haven't really had much from them now with regard to that. I've been focused on other things since this time, but we were heavily involved in the lead-up work prior to the launching of this regulatory sandbox. So for those of you who know people in the space who are developers, or if you're a developer yourself, you can go onto the Bank of Papua New Guinea website. You can download this form and you can apply. You can apply to become one of those operators within that space and start developing solutions, whether it be cryptocurrency. I remember I mentioned previously that I also created a cryptocurrency for Papua New Guinea. I call it Kumul Coin. It's sitting in the cloud out there because I can't use it right now because there's no regulation to regulate it. a fully fledged cryptocurrency belonging to Papua New Guinea. I developed it 2 years ago, but it's been sitting there because we're still waiting for regulation to meet us halfway. So this is basically where we're at with our friends there. Now the regulatory sandbox will provide a controlled environment for the testing of new technologies. Close dialogue and interaction between BPNG and sandbox participants will enable any potential risks to the market and to consumers to be identified and resolved at any stage, early stage, helping to accelerate the time to market for viable solutions. So you see, blockchain and cryptocurrencies fall right under this category. It's not a technology that's understood, but there has to be some level of protection to address some of those risks that people are going to be. So this is a good way forward. This is a good way forward. And probably at a later time, I will be able to provide some kind of an update to this group or through our friends at CPA PNG, where we're heading with that, because it's very important that we also keep close tabs and we push our people at BPNG to make sure that they are driving this agenda too. So these are some of the things right at the bottom there, the regulation aspect. What are some of the things that this regulation is going to cover? The use, development, and deployment of distributed ledger technologies, blockchain and cryptocurrency. So for example, if I'm going in there with a cryptocurrency that I've developed for Papua New Guinea, how is that going to be developed? What type of technology is going to be used? Will that technology be open source or will it be specific to my company? Yeah, I will not allow anyone else to be able to use that technology. Secondly, KYC and anti-money laundering requirements. That is another area which is a gray area for cryptocurrency right now. We already talked about the KYC issues with regard to people like terrorists who can use cryptocurrency to buy weapons of mass destruction and transfer millions, if not hundreds of billions, from one country to another from the e-wallets. AML too is also very important, and anti-money laundering, because it works in the same way. Because you just imagine, I'm living in Papua New Guinea, and I transfer money out of this country right underneath the noses of our central bank and BSP without even them knowing. I could just get my money, go onto an exchange, buy 100,000 kinas worth of Bitcoin on the exchange, transfer that money to my e-wallet address, access that money in another part of the world, and then transfer it into my bank account in another part of the world without even going through the banking system. Because just imagine with our SME cards, right? BSP SME cards. What is the limit? 30, 40,000. You could essentially transfer that amount of money out of the country as a foreigner every day using cryptocurrency. You can buy online using your card, your business card. On an exchange, you can go and swipe your card and you can buy 40,000 kinas worth of Bitcoin. The money leaves your BSP account, goes and sits on an exchange in your e-wallet, in your Bitcoin e-wallet. Now that money can be accessed anywhere in the world once it's translated to Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin is a global currency. And then you can fly to your country of origin, open your e-wallet there, and most e-wallets are linked to a Visa card these days. And then you can just go to any bank there and just withdraw, or you can use that money in any part of the world. So you see how easy it is to launder money out of Papua New Guinea using crypto as well. That's why I said the Bank of Papua New Guinea has to be actively involved in the regulation. Because if they are not, Papua New Guinea is going to lose out on all of its own revenue through money laundering. It's already happening. Trust me, if I've thought about it, there's some smart foreigner thinking about it right now. And hence, that is part of the reason why the banks have stopped all transactions online for crypto. Any cryptocurrency related transaction, buying, selling online, everything has been stopped. It doesn't go through the banking systems here. There used to be a large community of Papua New Guineans who use their Visa cards to purchase cryptocurrency online, just for their own investment. That doesn't happen anymore because their cards do not, they've blacklisted a lot of those websites online. There are only a very few people who can do that right now. So again, regulation is very important. One of the other things that this regulation needs to do is it has to merge with that electronic transactions bill that was tabled in Parliament recently. It needs to tie into that because on a website now, you're not just the internet IPGs. IPG is the Internet Payment Gateway. It's what connects your website to your bank account. So you have your website there. On one side, you've got your bank on one side, and in the middle, you have an internet payment gateway. So if, for example, if I'm going onto my website and I'm selling something on my website, if someone goes onto my website and swipes their card on my website, that money is going to go through the internet payment gateway system and then be directed into my nominated bank account. Okay. The reason why I'm saying that anything to do with blockchain has to go through some kind of merge with an electronic bill is because not all payments are done in Kinas and Toyos or US dollars anymore. Not all of them. There will be some element that people are going to opt to choose to pay using Bitcoin. So we need to accommodate for that in our regulation. You see what I'm going at. Before, for example, a good example would be IPA website. If you've gone into the IPA website, you know that you can purchase. You can buy, you can purchase your business name in company. You can incorporate your company online, and they have an option there for you to pay with your Visa card. What's to say that in the not too distant future, one of the options is to receive payment in the form of Bitcoin? Well, that regulation is not covered here. I've built a couple of websites, and I have the option on my websites to receive payment in Bitcoin. How does that affect me? How does it affect the end user? The regulation aspect of it. And that leads us to the last point, that this regulation is will essentially be focused on entities that interact with blockchain technologies. When I say that, I mean companies who are specifically in the business of developing blockchain solutions. My company is one of them. I have an online marketplace for our rural farmers that allows them to receive payment in the form of Bitcoin. How does that accommodate for people like me? Because our business is purely driven by blockchain and crypto. You see. So regulation has to be able to cover a lot of these things. And a starting point is, of course, that regulatory sandbox that we were talking about initially. Don't have anything to add with regard to regulation? Anyone have comments or have anything to say, particularly about this from their own experiences? Paulus?
If our government doesn't address those things, it really affect our trading as well in the future. Trading and even the tourism and other things will be affected.
Yeah. Paulus says that trading and what was the other one? Tourism could potentially be impacted, if you don't accommodate for some of these things. But right now, it doesn't really bother me at this point in time because we're still, as a nation, we're still coming to that stage. Yeah. But as we progress into the future, then you have companies now like Tesla started in the world has already started accepting Starbucks Bitcoin for payment of its coffee for its customers. So it's already commonplace in other parts of the world. Yeah, like in Singapore, I went to Singapore a few years ago, and you can buy Bitcoin ATM machine, but it works in reverse. Instead of giving you the money, you feed the money with Singapore dollars, and then it'll transfer that money to your nominated Bitcoin wallet. So yeah, and it just makes things so convenient. But in saying that, even places like Singapore too, when I was there a few years ago, the knowledge and the awareness was not there. There was a point in time when I was in my accommodation buildings and I had a group of people just come and sit on the floor to hear about cryptocurrency and blockchain in a country called Singapore. So you can just imagine how new the technology is. For Papua New Guinea to go to an advanced, I would consider Singapore advanced. For me to go and speak to Singaporeans who paid close attention to me, it tells you that the technology is relatively new. People are still coming to terms with it. So, the way I see it, Papua New Guinea has the potential to leapfrog into the future. Leapfrog, like a lot of African nations have. Simply because we do not have a lot of the legacy issues that a lot of these developed nations are currently facing. They have to go and undo a lot of things in order for them to start over again. Whereas we are starting more or less on a clean slate. As a nation, we can essentially leapfrog. We can connect everybody into the financial system in one hit. But of course, taking on board some of the disadvantages too, and some of the challenges that every country will face too, with regard to the technology. So regulation will form a very big role in how the technology will be utilized in our country. So these are the list that I've put up on the screen here, some of the stuff that I have developed. Just to illustrate that some of these technologies and solutions are not out of our reach as a people and as a nation or as a country. Yeah. Like the first one, online e-commerce platform. I've developed dozens of e-commerce platforms for fashion, for drop shipping, you name it. I've developed a whole heap of them. And the blockchain technology has the potential to revolutionize e-commerce because it brings a lot more to the table, apart from the ability to transfer globally using cryptocurrencies. Because of one of its key characteristics, its traceability. The traceability of the blockchain, meaning you can trace the product back and forth. You just imagine what that does to, for example, the agriculture and fisheries. Just a few years back, I was invited to Stanford University in Silicon Valley to do a pitch on a blockchain application we developed for fish. And we utilized, our focus was on one of the characteristics of a blockchain, which was in relation to its traceability. Because the FDA, one of the requirements is you must be able to transfer the fish, you must be able to find the traceability of the fish to where it originally came from. But there's a lot of illegal fishing happening. So the application that we built allowed us to track the fish from the artisanal farmers all the way to the end user. So once a consumer is sitting at the dinner table in America somewhere, and they have concerns to where that fish came from, they can simply scan that fish or the meal ticket sitting next to it, and it will tell them the history, where that fish has been. It came from the waters of Papua New Guinea, came through this channel. So they know exactly that that fish wasn't caught illegally. You see, that's traceability. And then you combine that now with cryptocurrency. So there's a traceable aspect, and also there's also a digital aspect that allows us to trade online as well. See, so you're cutting out a lot of those illegal activities along the way. Because right now with that legislation, someone who's doing illegal fishing cannot go and sell fish to someone in America if they cannot prove fish. They will not. It's to safeguard artisanal fishermen from illegal fishing. Okay. Okay, the second one, this is something I was working on as well. It's still an ongoing project, but it's for carbon trade. I don't know if we understand how lucrative the carbon trade business is around the world. And I think Papua New Guinea should really be focusing on this because we contribute a significant part of the rainforest to clearing the carbon dioxide in the air. We can be compensated for that through carbon trade initiatives. But how do you manage that process? Simple. You tokenize it. You simply go to a rainforest, measure how much oxygen. You can do that. You can measure the amount of oxygen or carbon dioxide comes through that particular rainforest. How many tons of carbon dioxide that particular rainforest can clean and convert into oxygen. And then you can receive money from those developed nations in the form of tokens to compensate you for that carbon that you are reducing in the atmosphere with the use of your forests. And then you can use that same token and pass that off onto the landowners, and they can use that and pay for goods and services in the shop. You see, there's an application there for Papua New Guinea. We can back our ability to remove some of this carbon in the atmosphere and tokenize it and take advantage of some of those carbon credits that are owing to countries like Papua New Guinea because we have some of the most unique rainforests here and we have that capability. Right out at our doorsteps, no one is doing anything about it. Okay, so that's our second thing that we've been working on. It's still a work in progress, getting there. The third one, supply chain and logistics management. This is also a very important aspect of a blockchain too. Again, one of the key characteristics of a blockchain is its traceability. Supply chain. Supply chain is just passing from one product from one point to another. Supply chain and logistic management. How do you manage that appropriately? With your current systems, there will always be an issue because there will always be some kind of opportunity along the supply chain for things to go sour, you know. Whereas on a blockchain, once you have your phone in hand, you can simply scan a product, register it on your blockchain, and you can take that up and people from the other part of the world or those who are transferring those products along the supply chain can monitor the product and they can get value for money. They know exactly where the product is at any point in time because they have real-time information. The fourth point, identity registration. We're currently preparing for elections. My question to you guys is, what is your thoughts on the electoral roll? John, you have any comments on the electoral roll? John just gave me that sarcastic grin and I just knew, I could just read his mind. What about you, Paulus? Any comments on the common roll? Well, you know, with the technologies that we have, we are able to create an identity system that combines blockchain and biometrics. The biometric aspect has already been done. I know a Papua New Guinean who's developed a biometric system that you can capture biometric data on a mobile phone device. You just put your fingerprint, it registers your fingerprint on a database, and then you can put your particulars in. That's your identity. In less than 2 or 3 minutes, you can be registered on a common role. And then you can use that identity now to vote. Same, you can integrate that, but all of these things are going to be put on a blockchain. And we've developed that solution. Why? Because it's safe and secure. It's not centralized. It's not controlled by anyone. We put the data in there and the system manages it without fear or favor of anybody. That's the whole point of the exercise, right? We don't want someone with too much control system, because then the system can be manipulated. And then come election time, you can even vote on your phone if you wanted to. You don't need to go and stand in front of a barrel of a gun and cast your vote. Sit in the comfort of your home, put your biometric signature in there, scan your retina, and you vote. That's how easy it is. The technology is already here, and we're still running around in circles here in Papua New Guinea. It's very frustrating, especially people like us in the space that we know these technologies exist. Not because, people with ulterior motives are sitting in those positions. They will never allow that to happen. Now watch this, because they know that there will be a fair and equitable election for Papua New Guinea. So that's one thing we've developed. Another thing too is land registration. We always have issues with land registration in Papua New Guinea. There's always a dispute somewhere. So just imagine you register your land on a blockchain. No one can go in there after hours and change ownership, steal your land title from you, because it's rightfully yours. And that data can never be changed. The only time it will be changed if you log into your account database, which is run by blockchain, and you transfer it to the next person. Otherwise, it will stay there for all eternity under your name. These are some things that a blockchain can fix. It can fix these issues that we've been having for so many years now in this country. Because let's face it, people die over land here in Papua New Guinea, right? People die over land issues, land ownership issues. But if you're able to properly register that land and be able to maintain that record and to produce those records at will when a conflict arises, then you're able to resolve all of these issues straight away. So that's how you can use the technology there. And then we've got, and we spoke about this with our identity registration, voting. A lot of companies now in the US, a lot of their board meetings, they vote using blockchain technology. They may either have a proxy there if they wish, but if not, they vote from anywhere in the world that the director is at for decisions and resolutions on the board. They're done using a blockchain, because it's undisputed. That's your identity. For that vote cannot. With the conventional systems, there's room there for people to get in because it's centralized. So anyone can go into the backend and play around with the coding and manipulate the system to suit a particular outcome. Blockchain, I wish you all the best. It will never happen. Because once the system is put and it's instructed to do a certain thing, it will do that. It will do that right down to the finest detail without any human intervention whatsoever. And finally, tokens, cryptocurrency development. There's only a handful of people, or not a handful, I think I'm probably the only person that I know of in the country who does this last one here. And it's not very difficult. I'm an accountant, just like every one of you in this room. And I picked it up. This last part, you can create your own token. You can create your own token outside of Papua New Guinea, put it on an exchange, and benefit from it, even without any regulation, because it's an international thing. It's on a foreign exchange. It doesn't have to go to the PNG government to do that. It's sitting on an existing platform that allows you to develop cryptocurrencies. And as I was saying, I developed a cryptocurrency and I wanted to use it specifically for Papua New Guinea. And I earmarked that for the platform that I was using, which is an online market for farmers. And I was going to integrate our own cryptocurrency to trade on that platform. But again, as I said, regulation is one thing that we need to be mindful of. The platform is there, but minus the cryptocurrency component until such time that there's some clarity with the Bank of Papua New Guinea about its usage. So you see, there's a lot of products that you can develop. These are just some of the stuff that my company has under MyCam Agritech. These are some of the things that we've just worked on over the years, trying to, build and finalize. Just waiting for that opportune moment when the technology will be given the green light to, go on. But some of these things you don't necessarily need regulation for. Like the registration app, you can go ahead and develop something to collect and register identities, things like that. You don't necessarily need regulation. You need to make it known the technology at the back end that you're using. But apart from that, you're collecting data. As long as you can show the technology in the back end and how it works, shouldn't be a problem. But a lot of these other things are dependent on regulations. Yeah. So those are some examples. Does anyone else have any examples that they think you can use the technology for? John, Paulus, anyone online? Oh, yes. Yes, Paulus has got one. He said about churches, churches can use.
Blockchain to maintain their church membership.
Absolutely, absolutely. They can use them to maintain their church memberships, or they can use them to, churches are not NGOs, right? They don't depend on government funding. So you may have a sister church here from one of the churches in another part of the world. And most of the churches here anyway come from other parts of the world. And so you can essentially transfer money from your church in America to support the church in here in the form of donations. But then again, regulation is enough. So at least donations are, some people too might take advantage of a lot of these things too, as people do sometimes when, trying to use some of these platforms to, do their own bidding. Yes, so church is a good one too. Managing donations and also keeping a database of all those people within your church. You can also use them for medical records. Just imagine if everyone was on, since the day they were born, and they are registered on a blockchain. And every time you go to a hospital, whether it's in Leh or in Goroka, it's on the same blockchain. Your identity is always the same. So your medical history can be captured on a blockchain anywhere, at any time. So if, for example, you collapse one day, all they need to do is if you have your number on your key tag somewhere and you have a medical history, the doctor simply scans it and all your medical history is there. They can save your life because they understand the type of treatment that you need. You see, we need to start thinking a bit deeper into how some of these things can really benefit us. The technology is here, but it's just driving them and applying them. Sometimes we can talk about these things, but it's not practical to apply them because there's no need to reinvent the wheel sometimes. If something works, there's no need for us to replace it. But there are some instances where some of the technology that we've talked about can be useful. Okay, so those are some of the things that we're talking about. So our time now is 12:30, so it's lunchtime. We take a break. We take a break. We'll come back at 1 o'clock, John, or 1:30. Okay, we'll come back at 1:30. I'll let you guys grab something to eat. Thank you for all those who are online who are participating. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them during the lunch hour and we can address them when we come back. When we come back at 1:30, we'll just we'll try to make it as participative as possible, get everyone to provide some input as to what they have learned. We'll discuss some more key elements of blockchain and cryptocurrency, and then we'll call it a day. But real thank you. We'll see you all again at 1:30. Thank you, everybody. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Thank you all for your participation. I know it's been a long day and a lot of different things that we've discussed. This final part of our discussion is more or less just going through what we've already discussed, plus providing some final comments with regard to the topic at hand. I hope that throughout the course of this presentation that you've come to appreciate the technology that we've discussed, and that is built an awareness for yourselves first and foremost, but also for the purposes of educating the technology. The main purpose of this course and this presentation is to just give you an insight into the technologies surrounding cryptocurrency and blockchains, some of its merits, some of its qualities and characteristics, some of its cons and pros. So we've discussed, talked about a lot of these issues in the past. You know, it can be quite overwhelming, but I hope that we've been able to present to you some of the elements of a blockchain and cryptocurrency that have made it so attractive. So again, we started our discussion by discussing some of the history behind the cryptocurrency and the blockchain. Some of the milestone dates would be 2009. So if anyone asks you about where or when things like blockchain and cryptocurrency came onto the global stage, that would be a person or a group of people we still do not know, by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto, came onto the scene and distributed the first white paper with regards to the first concept / white paper about blockchain and a cryptocurrency called Bitcoin. For your information, the first transaction that was ever made was, I can't remember the name, but was the purchase of, I think, a number of pizzas. So pizza was the first good that was ever bought with Bitcoin way back in the day. Just some information there. Till this day, we do not know who this person is who created the technology, but the world around us have come to really appreciate it. And as a programmer and a software developer, and having developed blockchains of my own, I've appreciated the technology and what it sets to address and its benefits. So I hope that from an accounting perspective that you too will also be able to appreciate and understand the technologies and some of its application in your day-to-day lives, and probably for the future as Papua New Guinea moves with the rest of the world into a more technology-driven space, considering the COVID and other such events around. So we talked about cryptocurrency, blockchain. We defined what blockchain and cryptocurrency were. We talked about some of the distinguishing features between the existing centralized and decentralized systems that we are familiar with. So we've identified that blockchain is a decentralized ledger of sorts. single accounting ledgers that we're all too familiar with as accountants, but on a network that is a shared ledger amongst all the nodes, which are individuals like you and myself who are part of the blockchain. We also understand that there are several blockchains, not just blockchain, the chain, but there's others called, there's over 1,000 different cryptocurrencies and they have their own individual chains too that they run off as well. So feel free that in your free time, go and examine some of those things online, do your own research. We also talked about some of the differences between the conventional banking system and the blockchain and especially cryptocurrency. We also talked about e-wallets that allow you to maintain your crypto assets, whether it be in the form of cryptocurrency or an NFT or any other digital asset that can be digitized, can be kept in an e-wallet. We also talked about some of the pros and cons of a wallet in comparison to your, again, with regard to wallets, you are the sole owner of that wallet and its maintenance and anything to do with accessing the wallet is your responsibility. So as we discussed, if you happen to lose your wallet credentials, then all hope for you is then lost because you cannot call a central body to help you to gain access to your wallet again. Whereas with the conventional banking system, you'll be able to contact your bank and they'll be able to reissue credentials that allow you to access your account. So we talked about that. We moved over to talking about some of the differences between cryptocurrencies and the normal fiat cash. Again, the differences being mainly to do with centralization, decentralization, cryptocurrencies being issued by computers, whereas fiat money is issued by the government of the day, and other characteristics that differentiate the two. In this final part of our presentation, I would like to put it back to those of you now who are in this presentation, just for you to give some of the things that you've learned throughout the course of the day, and also to provide some comments. So if you have any questions, you can raise them towards the back end of this our presentation now. To you today will also be disseminated via email by John and the team here at CPA PNG. And on top of that, this presentation is also being recorded. So they will also be able to share the video content with you so that if you wish, you can access the video at a later time and review some of the topics that were discussed today. So to begin with, we'll probably start here in the CPA house. We have Paulus here, who has joined me from, Paulus, are you from Steamship, sir? Or previously? Okay. Just some of the learnings that you've learned today, you want to share with us? Something that you didn't know before coming here today, before I summarize? We can demonstrate some of the technology that we've just discussed in an environment that we can create for ourselves. So I have no issues with that. We can do that. I also have videos and a manual that also is tied into that blockchain and cryptocurrency so that you can follow through. With the wallet that we've built, we're also able to mine the coin. So we can actually mine Kumu coin and create Kumu coin for ourselves as miners on a network. And then we can use those coins to transact amongst ourselves. So just let me give me some time. Let me go back and I'll set all these things up. I'll send the instruction manual on your desktops, and then once we're all online and we can start to transact with others, we'll probably create a group and share our e-wallet addresses, and we can just transfer tokens from one person to another, and then you can also see the transaction on a block explorer to see exactly who it went to and how much is sent and all of those things. So you gain an understanding of what an e-wallet looks like, what its functionalities are. When you do go online and start registering with a lot of these technologies that are available to us now, then at least you have some experience using the technology that we've developed ourselves. So stand by for that. I have a concept paper out as well that ties gold, so a gold-backed cryptocurrency, which is a stable coin. So I've also developed a concept paper for that as well. So I'll share that as well. So at least you understand some of the concepts that we've discussed and how they tie into our actual white paper that identifies a cryptocurrency and its usage and the technology that surrounds it and its capabilities, most importantly. So we'll share that with you, plus some other resources about how to wallet, what to look for, some tips on how to safeguard into the crypto space, safeguard yourselves in your wallet. Crypto and blockchain are very secure. There's also possibilities that you can't be hacked if you are irresponsible and are not able to take care of your credentials. There's some best practices that we must all employ to protect those assets as well. Presentation, you expect some more materials apart from the ones that you've seen, just to reinforce some of the learnings that we've spoken about today. Yep. Of course, I posed a question to our participants here in the room, but as well as I also like to pose a question to everyone online. If you have any comments, any concluding remarks before we end our session, please feel free to air your comments before we finish up this session.
Chris,
Yep.
thank you very much. I don't have a question, but I just one of the things that really struck me was the blockchain technology and how efficient it was in terms of even some of your projects that you're working on, and such as the Electoral Commission voting or electoral roll, and also the lens registration process and all that. So it's very interesting to sort of learn about the difference between a blockchain and the cryptocurrency, of which Bitcoin is one of them. Yeah. So yeah, so it's sort of a very positive sign for us going forward into the future, especially with your participation in with the regulators like central bank and all that. Like you mentioned that, you know, some countries they are sort of a new thing, and some countries are also especially the regulation aspect, which I think that eventually everybody will sort of go with the flow in terms of the beauty about this technology and the good things or the pros which sort of outweigh the cons just from the way you are presenting. So yeah, so I just want to make mention about what I basically sort of picked out here is the difference between, you know, because I was thinking it was the same thing, but really blockchain is sort of the technology that cryptocurrency is running on, and also you can use the blockchain technology for other you know, other developments are, like in some of your projects that you are working on right now. So I also commend you for the initiative and the desire to pursue that field or area that now we are learning today.
Thank you for your comments, Nigel. I appreciate that, and I'm glad that you've picked up on some of the fundamentals. These are some things that I've learned over several years. So to be able to present it to my fellow Papua New Guineans in a short period of time, and for them, it's very important to me. So thank you very much for your comments, Nigel. Appreciate them.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
No, I'd just like to say thank you too. It's Thor here.
Hi, Thor.
I understand more about the industry. It'll be interesting to see how one of the players, Tether, goes over the coming 6 months or so. The only concern I have is players like Tether who get into trouble themselves. Do you see that as just a minor setback for the growth of this type of industry? Because I know Tether got into trouble a while ago for some bad comments and lying, but that would probably only be just, you'd see that as just a teething pain, as growing pains, as that's how the market will grow, some ups and downs along the way. Would that be correct, Christopher?
Yeah, absolutely. Like with every new technology or any new development, there's always a teething stage. And that's why sessions like this are very important, simply because of the fact that, when you introduce a new technology into the marketplace, you really don't know how amongst other competing technologies, and just the sheer level of understanding that the marketplace has to a particular product. But, like with any technology that comes out of the marketplace, you'd expect some setbacks earlier on, but that's all part of the process of learning and developing a solution. And of course, that is, for me, that is a good thing, because then you understand what market expectations are, and then you're better to develop your solution to suit your target market. So yeah, I'm confident just hitting pains at this stage, and the technology will continuously grow and improve.
Thank you, Christopher.
Welcome, Phil. Thank you for your participation.
Appreciate it. Cheerio. Is that the end now?
Yep, I think that brings us to the end, unless anyone else has anything to say. That's the end of my presentation. Just expect the resources via email from our good friends at the CPNG.